many of them are having to choose between paying their energy costs, which will provide them with air conditioning, or feeding their kids. And they also may not be able to access the most nutritious food, which will make everybody in the household more vulnerable to heat extremes. And then, of course, the unhoused who are living outside during these terrible heat waves. And in most parts of the world, poverty intersects with race and ethnicity. So people of color are often more vulnerable because they're poor and discriminated against. And also indigenous folks in many parts of the world can be very vulnerable to extreme heat.
Heat emergency procedures in major cities in Arizona are addressing some extreme heat.
This is CBC Winnipeg. Here are the lineup tones in advance of the CBC Winnipeg weekday morning show.
During extreme heat. One of the things we figured out is they need to be able to take their pets because they don't want to abandon them, who are also very vulnerable to extreme heat.
There's also free transport to those heat relief centres, which have free cold drinks and snacks.
We also have tree planting programs that are providing shade in some of the poorest areas of Tucson where there isn't tree cover that can reduce temperatures. Everybody in Arizona is threatened by the drought on the Colorado River, which comes to many urban areas. But one of the problems, for example, with having trees around your house is during these heat waves, you actually need
This
to
is CBC Winnipeg. Here are the lineup tones in advance of the CBC Winnipeg weekday morning show.
For example, on Indigenous lands where people don't have good access to running water, the droughts are making the wells decline. And the big problem with extreme heat is you're going to have more evaporation, and that means less water. So people are having to spend hundreds of dollars just to keep a vegetable garden going in this extreme heat. There are going to be a lot of people suffering if we don't act faster and more seriously on climate change.
So back to our main question. Can we live with extreme heat? Yes, but only if the means to adjust to it are available, affordable, and sustainable. That goes for countries with tropical climates and cooler ones where buildings are designed to keep heat in. Whether the measures to tackle future record-breaking hot spells are more proactive or more reactive is also crucial. Last word to our expert witness, Winston Chow.
Cities don't have much of a choice. It's either we adapt or we face the consequences of not just higher heat risks, but other sorts of climate-driven impacts like droughts and floods and sea level rise that many cities will face in the years to come. So if you don't adapt, then you're going to have to pay the consequences of a significantly warmer world.
This episode of The Inquiry was written and presented by me, Charmaine Cozier. The producer was Jill Collins, researcher Amelia Cox, editor Tom Bigwood, and technical producer Cameron Ward.
That was The Inquiry from the BBC. I'm Saroja Coelho here on CBC Radio 1.
Good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. On YouTube. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being with us this morning. It is Wednesday morning. We find ourselves at August 5th. And in Winnipeg today, mix of sun and cloud. We do have a 60% chance of showers late this afternoon, our high 25 degrees. Up in Thompson today, mix of sun and cloud, 30% chance of showers this afternoon, risk of a thunderstorm for you. Your high is 23. And over in the city of Brandon, a mix of sun and cloud, good chance of showers, 60%, and your high is 24 degrees. So that's how we're setting up the day weather-wise. We're on air till 8:37 a.m. with your morning show on CBC. Let's say hello to the crew. The rest of the show, Abby's going to be covering the weather in detail for us. Abby Adiyemi, our senior tech in the show. Hey there. And hello to Darren Marash, who's behind the controls of our YouTube stream as well in our Studio 15 here, if you're watching the show there. And Mr. Corey Funk is in directing the program today. He will also be on the air covering your commute. Well, let's get to Heather Wells. She's here too from our news center, 2 minutes to 6 with your local headlines.
Good morning. Well, the Trump administration's planned closure of the U.S. consulate in Winnipeg may affect Americans more than Manitobans. That's according to an expert. Brian Peeler at the University of Manitoba says the consulate serves as the eyes and ears for the U.S. when it comes to trade. A Manitoba government spokesperson says the U.S. consulate is under federal jurisdiction. And a drunk driver who killed a young couple in Winnipeg last summer was sentenced to 8 years. Kuldeep Singh Gill was speeding down Keniston when he struck Igor Popov and Carrie Bonner, who were cycling on the paved shoulder. Popov's mother, Elena Manikova, traveled to from Montreal to Winnipeg for the hearing, and she says this driver will always have her son's and his partner's lives weighing on his conscience, as well as their 19-month-old child. I'll be back with more Manitoba News at 6:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
Thanks.
In the first hour of the show, we're going to be talking to Canada-U.S. Trade Minister Canada-U.S. Trade Minister Dominic LeBlanc. He's back in Washington ahead of the U.S. threat of a whopping 50% tariff on hundreds of Canadian products. So we're going to hear more about that. Also, some good news. Summer-wise, the water bus is open now for business after high water did keep it closed all summer long here in Winnipeg. So we'll hear more about its routes. Stay tuned.
On cue.
The violinist Vijay Gupta seemed destined for greatness from an early age. He performed at Carnegie Hall at 8 years old, studied at Juilliard and Yale, but behind that success, he was struggling with anxiety, addiction, and burnout. He's here to tell us his story.
Cue, this morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on CBC Listen, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm Marcia Young. In Kyiv, firefighters hosed down flames at a hardware store. It was damaged in the latest wave of Russian missile and drone strikes. Ukrainian officials say at least 17 people were killed and 44 injured in attacks around the capital area. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky shared a disturbing video captured in the eastern region of Kherson. A civilian identified as 52-year-old a man named Yuri is seen being attacked by an exploding drone. Yuri survived and says this is the second time he's come under attack. Ukraine is accusing Russia of hunting innocent people with drones like a human safari. Critical votes are being counted in Michigan. It is one of 5 states that held primary elections last night. These votes are seen as a litmus test for the Democratic Party's future. Will they stick with a moderate representative or go with a more progressive candidate? Reporter Steve Futterman joins me now from Los Angeles. And Steve, what is the latest?
Well, this is one of the most closely watched races in the nation. Democrats deciding who their candidate will be in this November's U.S. Senate race, a race that could determine which party controls the U.S. Senate. So a lot's at stake. The final votes are still being counted, but right now, the so-called progressive candidate, Abdul El-Sayed, has a narrow lead over the more establishment moderate candidate, Haley Stevens. She's a current member of the House. Now, no winner's been declared, but the New York Times says its analysis shows El-Sayed is the likely winner. Now, both candidates spoke last night, and both were very careful not to declare victory.
We've had a long, hard-fought primary, and we'll know soon who our nominee is going to be. And whoever wins is going to go and take on Mike Rogers.
We are not a purple state. We are a state in need of a movement to take our politics back.
And of course, this race seems to crystallize the ongoing battle within the Democratic Party between the establishment candidates and progressives. One of the big issues dividing the two sides, support for Israel, with progressive candidates promoting a more critical approach toward longtime U.S. policies in the Middle East.
Break down the other primaries.
Well, one other race I found very interesting was in Kansas, a traditional red state. Voters there, though, rejected a Republican-backed plan to allow voters to elect state Supreme Court judges. And this is another example of how voters in many states across the nation are going against the traditional parties, even when the parties have a majority in those states.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Reporter Steve Futterman in Los Angeles. Canada-U.S. Trade Minister Dominic LeBlanc is back in Washington, D.C. He's expected to meet with American senators and key U.S. industry leaders. LeBlanc is also meeting with Canada's negotiating team, including Chief Trade Negotiator Janice Charette. The visit comes ahead of the U.S.'s August 19 tariff deadline. If a deal between the countries is not reached by then, 50% tariffs will go into effect on Canadian goods. The U.S. State Department says it's shutting down 5 foreign missions. One is the U.S. consulate in Winnipeg. Businesses on both sides of the border are worried. The downsizing of the United States' economic footprint and trade tariffs are already having an impact on their bottom lines. The CBC's Santiago Arias Orozco has the details.
It's useful to have feet on the ground.
For 20 years, Brad Kirbison worked at the United States Consulate in Winnipeg. It opened in 2001, covering the area between Toronto and Calgary.
It's a lot of geography, a lot of people, and a lot of issues that it's very hard to address from that distance.
The office doesn't handle visas or passports. Its key role to promote business and trade with Canada. Now the U.S. Department of State is transferring those responsibilities to its embassy in Ottawa, closing Winnipeg in a bid to streamline operations. Brian Peeler, with the Department of Political Science at the University of Manitoba, says it's a bigger loss for Americans.
Giving up a set of eyes and ears on a province that it's, currently making sectoral specific trade decisions about.
André Brun with Winnipeg's World Trade Center says Manitoba businesses will also bear the brunt. The U.S. consulate has helped them set up across the border. Hydro exports, agricultural supply chains, sales of critical minerals from Manitoba, now left without a direct advocate in the U.S. economy.
Who's now informing the U.S. ambassador in Ottawa on what's going on here?
The State Department says its priorities in Canada remain steadfast. It's unclear when the consulate will stop operating. Santiago Arias Orozco, CBC News, Winnipeg.
The number of new HIV infections is rising across this country, and it has Canadian health officials concerned about global funding cuts for HIV programs. In response, doctors in Calgary are launching a national consortium. And as the CBC's Karina Zapata reports, the goal is to create preventative solutions before it's too late.
This has the potential to result in a resurgence of the HIV epidemic.
Infectious disease physician Dr. Raynell Lang sounding the alarm about funding cuts by the U.S. and other international donors, which she says has led to less HIV testing, prevention, and care in many low and middle income countries.
Because of the lack of access to services and care, people are maybe migrating with little or much less medications that they previously had.
It's why she's working to bring doctors, researchers, organizations, and HIV-positive Canadians together. The consortium is calling on federal and provincial governments to do a better job of educating migrants and newcomers on HIV resources available here. Dr. John Gill, medical director of the Southern Alberta HIV Clinic, is helping lead the group.
We cannot be complacent that this will not directly or indirectly affect us, because healthcare, particularly infectious diseases, is a global problem.
At the Council of Agencies Serving South Asians, research lead Shabazz Mamdani is also very concerned about the international funding cuts. But he says,
we must be very careful not to translate that concern into the idea that immigrants bring HIV into Alberta.
Mamdani says it's also critical to improve culturally appropriate care for those already in Canada. In a statement to CBC, Health Canada says it continues to work with partners, including the provinces and territories, on tackling the public health issue. Karina Zapata, CBC News, Calgary.
Basically, I grabbed my marriage license, I grabbed a few odds and ends and some mementos, and I was out of there.
Arlene Jerva's home was on the main Okanagan Indian Reserve in British Columbia. It's now one of hundreds of properties destroyed by the Bradley Creek fire. 15,000 people in the province have been ordered to evacuate.
It's very, very difficult. We're trying to just stay as positive as we can, and we're just trying to not think about it, frankly.
116 wildfires are currently burning across BC. Crews have several weeks of high-intensity work left. August and September are often the most active months for wildfires in BC. Starting today, people will be able to walk or cycle across the Gordie Howe International Bridge. At 8 a.m. Eastern, the long-delayed border crossing opens to pedestrians. The CBC's Pratish Dayal tells us about the anticipation behind the moment.
And I just kind of took all my yoga mat to sleep on, got my chair here.
Windsor resident Justin Belmore has been camping at the base of the Gordie Howe International Bridge since early yesterday morning.
So I've just been telling everyone for years that I wanted to be the first one to cycle across the Gordie Howe once this multi-use trail opened. So got to be a man of my word. And it kind of started as a joke, but here we are.
Belmore is just one of many people excited to make their way across the $6.4 billion structure when it opens to foot traffic today. Vehicles have been crossing the bridge since last week after delays caused by ongoing trade tensions with the U.S. Still, some business owners like Phil Jacobs, who runs Jake's Old Town Tavern in Sandwich Town, are hoping the bridge will be a boon for the bottom line.
We've already had probably 8 Americans that have been over already and used our patios.
The path along the Gordie Howe Bridge is more than 2 kilometers long and connects to trails on either side of the border. Officials say it's open to everyone to travel by foot, bike or mobility device as long as they carry the proper identification. Pratish Dayal, CBC News, Windsor.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. The most read story at cbcnews.ca is about veteran Canadian broadcaster Lloyd Robertson, dead at the age of 92. He was the anchor at CTV News for 35 years, but he started his career right here at CBC News. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Thanks for joining us here on Information Radio on CBC, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, and the app and YouTube. Great to have you with us Wednesday, August 5th. Man, we had a beautiful sky right around 5 o'clock this morning before it became first light. Just this inky navy blue, heralding a day ahead that's a little bit cooler, and we are going to get a chance of showers in there too. Abby in a moment with the weather for this Wednesday. Well, speaking of all the wet stuff, not the showers, but the river, the water bus is open for business after high water kept it closed all summer long in Winnipeg. We're going to hear about the city's river transportation service, how they've adapted to demand and unpredictable weather. Also this hour on the program, social media can be a lifeline for people looking for emergency information, but it can also spread misinformation faster than ever before. We're going to talk with an expert about the pros and cons of using platforms like Facebook and X in times of trouble. And of course, this is highly relevant to Manitoba. Last summer, when we had the worst wildfires in our provincial history, in terms of the numbers of people evacuated all at once, one of the things that was very difficult was when a picture would come in of a fire area, and you'd realize if someone said it was Manitoba, you really have to verify, was it Manitoba? You could look at a picture and it could be straight out of British Columbia. So if somebody wants to spread misinformation, there are easy ways to do it and to scare people in emergencies. So that's going to be an interesting conversation just before 7 o'clock. Right now, let's go to Heather Wells. She's here with Morning Headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, Winnipeg's first supervised drug consumption site opens next week with limited hours every Tuesday to Saturday, 11 in the morning till 6:45 at night. Dakota Hunter, a volunteer who spends many evenings checking on people living on Main Street, believes the site will save lives but wishes it would be open longer. 3 downtown Winnipeg Canada Inns properties are up for sale. The Radisson Hotel on Portage Avenue, the Somerset office building next door, and the Metropolitan Entertainment Centre to the south. In a statement, Canada Inns says it is committed to downtown Winnipeg. The Downtown Winnipeg Biz says there will always be changes to the downtown market. We'll hear more coming up in our next local news at 6:30.
All right, thanks, Heath.
Thank you.
Let's go to Abby now with the weather. Hi, Abby.
Yeah, hi, Marcy. Another cool morning before we start seeing temperatures bounce back to seasonal values. Today, we'll see temperatures climbing into the mid-20s across the southern regions, while up north, we're still going to see highs of 18s and then into the low low 20s for some of the regions up north. Here in the Red River Valley region, Winnipeg is starting the day at 12 degrees. That's what we're tracking both at the airports and at the Forks. It's clear outside. We're expecting the sun to make its appearance. Then we'll see a mix of sun and clouds. We do have a good chance of afternoon showers and maybe a thunderstorm risk in the mix. We'll get some breezy conditions, and of course we warm up to 25 later. And across the province, looking at the Pembina Valley region all the way to the Interlake region, temperatures already close to 12 degrees with clear skies, and most of the regions will see highs between 23 and 25 with a mix of sun and clouds. And of course the southern regions will have a good chance of showers and thunderstorms, and of course some gusty winds in some areas. Up north, we're looking at temperatures close to 15 at this time, and it's clear. We'll see highs between 15 and 23 degrees. So it's more like this cool start will then give way to the warm, normal summer temperatures across board today. Winnipeg expecting a mix of sun and clouds. We are currently around 12 degrees now. We get to 25 later.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
And just noticed the rain just started over in Brandon. Let's find out about the commute with Corey Funk.
Yeah, one issue to keep an eye out for this morning, the intersection of King Edward and Logan. Those lights are out completely right now due to a hydro outage. So treat that as a four-way stop. Might catch you off guard this morning. So careful if you're approaching King Edward and Logan this morning. Those lights completely out. If you have any updates on that or anything else you're seeing out there, whether you're walking your bike and you're driving, would love to hear from you. You can give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number 204-788-3093.
Well, what is your favorite? Busing, driving, or maybe it's being out on the water. If you prefer aquatic transportation, then Winnipeg Waterways Water Bus is officially open for the season, and likely good news for you. It's a wonderful way to see the city, whether or not you're using it for practical purposes or to be a tourist in your own town. Its first day back in business was Saturday, August 1st, so just last weekend. They had a delayed opening because of the high river levels this year. Will Belford is the co-owner of Winnipeg Waterways. He spoke with CBC's Julie Buckingham about this on Up to Speed.
How many parties can you fit on the bus?
Parties of one?
Yeah.
We can fit 30.
30?
30 parties of one, or one party of 30. Yeah, we bought an extra big water bus to serve the rivers this year.
It's new?
Yeah, brand new. It's the first season on the water.
So let's rewind a bit to Saturday, August 1st. I'm sure you were thrilled to finally be able to do this. How busy were you on reopening day?
It was pretty good. You know, we announced it like less than 24 hours before launch, and part of that was due to the fact that we were really trying to get it open for August long weekend, but we were waiting for the water to play ball. So we really didn't announce it we didn't give people a whole lot of notice, but for those that came out, I mean, it's like a homecoming. You know, that first stop at the Hugo docks on its way to the Forks is always full.
Is it normal for your operation to start this late into summer?
Well, so this is our third season
right.
On the waters as Winnipeg Waterways. And what we've noticed, normal is changes
right.
every single year. What happened in 2024 is completely different from 2025, and now we're seeing something completely new for 2026. The water level and the speed of water on the Assiniboine has been a major talking point. Mm-hmm. Folks having trouble in their canoes.
Absolutely.
And of course, that water is coming from the west, and all those folks dealing with the floodwaters and what have you. And so that's what's new for us. Yeah, we're just so happy that we get a chance to get out there. Some years the water's so turbulent and moving up and down that we don't even get a chance. So we're just happy to be out there.
So the normal is not normal because you never know what normal is.
Yeah. That's right. There's the history is long. The water bus service has been operating for the last 30 years, and it's a favorite for a lot of folks. But that launch date is always elusive, and so that's why we didn't get a whole lot of notice. But now I'm really excited to get the word out.
And maybe explain to people, because they might be like, well, it's a boat, it's a water. Why does the water level matter to you? We understand what matters for canoeists, so it could be too fast and they could be overcome. But a powered vessel, maybe explain why the water level matters to you.
Yeah, good point. So Winnipeg has a number of public docks, and they're made out of, concrete, and they're right into the side of the river. They're super popular for folks to go down and be by the riverside, to fish and, to hang out and things like that. We even see marriage proposals and
That's fun.
And weddings there. So they're popular locations, but they're at fixed heights. So when the water comes up, most of the time it's due to the Red River because it has the most volume. It's a big, wide river. And so when there's a lot of water and a lot of in the system coming up from the south, then it fills our entire water system here locally inside the city. And when there's lots of rain, then it'll come up. And so you'll often find in the spring times, the river walk is flooded.
Right.
And so that's the level that everything is built to. So right now, everything on the red is at serviceable level. There's lots of water in the Assiniboine, so it's coming in very fast. But most of the Riverwalk is accessible with some exceptions. So the ledge, the legislative grounds, we call it the ledge around here.
Yeah.
It's just hovering right at Riverwalk level. So it's just a little wet right now, and we can't serve it at this time. And then at Hugo, the water's actually over the pier there, but we installed a temporary floating dock because that's how excited we are to actually get the service going this year. We won't let it stop us.
Yeah, I guess it's not so much a tour as if people want to get on and get off, right?
Yeah, just like the land bus.
Yeah, all right. So what are the hours of operation?
So we are running Wednesday to Monday. So Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesdays. We're taking Tuesdays off to clean and maintain the boat and make sure everything's...
It's Taco Tuesday.
It's Taco Tuesday. We can't compete with tacos. So, and then we run first departure from Hugo is at 1 p.m. with regular service all day. And the last arrival is back at the Forks at 8:15 p.m.
How has business been since Waterbus got that reboot in 2024?
Yeah, when we came back in 2024, it was fantastic. We were really actually not sure how well the water bus would do. We never having run it before. We were cobbling together information that we've gathered from folks that have been around for those years before we arrived. And a lot of folks said, "Oh, it's a hard road. It's not very well traveled and stuff like that." And so we were a little bit worried. But then when we started, we were absolutely shocked to find just how much people love the service. And so straight from our first departure on that first day, the boats were full. And every single day that we operated, we found, a lineup of people waiting at that first dock. And so we were like working, boat after boat after boat to get them off that dock and get them out into the world. So that's what gave us the confidence to buy this bigger boat.
So that's Will Belford, the co-owner of Winnipeg Waterways, in conversation yesterday on Up to Speed with Julie Buckingham of CBC Manitoba. She's filling in on Up to Speed hosting. If you want to find information now that the water bus is running, the water level has reached a low level they can go and have all their taxi service. And if you want to find their route for those buses, you can find it at winnipegwaterways.ca.
Local news is in decline across Canada, and this is bad news for all of us. With less local news, noise, rumors, and misinformation fill the void, and it gets harder to separate truth from fiction. That's why CBC News is putting more journalists in more places across Canada, reporting on the ground from where you live, telling the stories that matter to all of us. Because local news is big news. Choose news, not noise. CBC News.
6:22 a.m. Well, local news right now includes a lot of businesses bracing for what might happen. This is not a relaxing summer for the Carney government. With the threat of new U.S. tariffs looming, Canada-U.S. Trade Minister Dominic LeBlanc is in Washington yet again for talks. As you heard on World Report, he's working against an August 19th deadline. So that is when U.S. President Donald Trump says he will impose 50% tariffs on hundreds of Canadian exports. In Manitoba, John McLaughlin says his Winnipeg business would take a serious hit if those tariffs happen. He shared with CBC Manitoba that it would, as he says, pretty much eliminate his company's ability to be competitive in the U.S. markets. McLaughlin's vice president of operations over at Foampack. That's a company that manufactures expanded polyethylene foam. And that, of course, is just one example of a local business that is bracing for what might happen. Lori Turnbull is here to talk about this and the reaction across the country. She's a political scientist over at Dalhousie University, and she's on Zoom today. Hi there.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being with us. So what do we actually know about the latest visit by LeBlanc to Washington and what it might have achieved?
Well, I mean, I'm trying to keep my expectations pretty moderate at this point, because I think we're in this situation where the CUSMA negotiations are going to be going on. U.S. Trade Representative Jameson Greer says that he's looking at the end of the year to put together an interim deal with Canada, with Mexico as well. And so these talks will be happening for a while. I think President Trump threw on this extra threat of more tariffs to take effect on August 19th in the hope of making us feel panicked. And this is the way he operates. He throws chaos into the situation in hopes that the opponent will feel confused and worried and scared, and then feel pressured to make a deal with them that's not necessarily in our interest. I don't think that that's going to be happening. I think that we are going to keep we're going to keep calm, as the Prime Minister has been doing from day one. So I'm not sure really whether we should expect to hear anything out of this meeting or not.
How challenging or how much easier, maybe on the flip side of that, is it getting to identify when something is an empty threat? Because we're now, we're now hearing this, as you said, over and over from the U.S. president, but there still has to be a calculation there about how to respond or not respond to panicky, right? With too much panic.
Exactly. 100%. So, and this is the line that we walk with President Trump all the time. And this is the thing that's so, I guess, unsettling and different about how the relationship between the two countries is right now as compared to what it was before. Frankly, I think there probably was always going to be some kind of change in the trade relationship between the countries. We can see protectionism in the U.S. doesn't just come from Donald Trump. There are other people who want to see different trade relationships too, but that's not really the hugely problematic part. The hugely problematic part is the unpredictability, him making policy by social media, and you don't know if he's serious about this or not. Comments like Canada should be the 51st state. We're still arguing about whether that was a serious threat or not. And so I think that's why we see the Prime Minister take the strategy he does. He doesn't react. He's just, he doesn't necessarily make any kind of statement when the president tweets something or puts something out on Truth Social or whatever. He just tries to keep going and not have that reaction that, frankly, President Trump is looking for, which is, a nervous kind of, okay, we'll come back to the table, we'll give you what you want. I don't think we're going to see that. But at the same time, it could be that this isn't an idle threat. It could be that this is serious and he goes through with it, in which case the Prime Minister is saying, everything's on the table. He's indicated he's not going to use energy as a leverage point, but we may see retaliation in the event that this goes through.
I was going to ask you about that, the retaliatory measures should this come to fruition. He has said energy's off the table. I guess if it comes through, we don't know. What else do we have that we could use, if that's the proper word?
Right. I mean, the Prime Minister has indicated we're not going to use energy as a leverage point. I mean, you hear people like Ontario Premier Doug Ford say we should use everything, right? Like we should cut off the supply of energy. We should cut off the supply of critical minerals. We should, do all these really drastic things. Doug Ford seems to think we could kind of bring America to its knees if we wanted. I don't think the Prime Minister is going to do anything like that. I think at the same time as he's trying to keep things on track with the U.S. and again, not overreact, not react, at the same time, he's trying to keep the country together. And so that in some ways has a limiting effect on what Canada might do. Like we've got some other leverage points too, kind of in the other direction. Like, for example, would we back down on a booze ban? I don't think Doug Ford wants to do that. We're certainly not going to be backing down on something like supply management. But these are the types of things that Donald Trump is looking for. So I think we'll have to wait and see what happens if these things go through on the 19th.
Just remind us of the nature of the threat. So we've been saying 50% tariffs on a variety of Canadian products. Can you give us some examples, sort of what of what kinds of things that would affect?
So it's kind of a mixed bag of things. It's not necessarily that there's a unifying thread through all of these things, and so dairy products would be affected, alcohol would be affected. I think that's totally there is a narrative thread to that one that Trump is very upset about the booze ban, and so I think now he's kind of knocking it back on Canadian products. Wigs, electronics, sporting goods like hockey sticks. So that clearly has that symbolic impact as well, right? Like the sport that's loved by both countries. He's saying we're going to put a higher tariff on your hockey sticks.
And energy not included in this? Things like
Right. Exactly. Not energy, not potash. And so when President Trump says we don't need Canada for anything, you can look at the list and see what's missing. And you can see, I think, what they do need us for, because he's not putting more tariffs on those things.
All right. Thank you very much, as always, Lori. I appreciate having you on the show.
You got it. Thanks for having me.
It's Lori Turnbull with us via Zoom Live, political scientist over at Dalhousie University. If you are a business that is watching this closely and wants to weigh in or share your story with CBC about how you might be affected, or also how you might be preparing for August 19th and maybe diversifying or trying to expand other markets elsewhere maybe, you can always give us a call if you'd like to share your story. It's CBC. And the call number is 788-3205. That's our listener line, 788-3205. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio at CBC, and we're coming up to news time. We have one thing to mention in traffic here, and that is King Edward and Logan. There's a hydro outage in the area, and that means that lights are without power. So treat that intersection as an always stop and use caution if you're traveling through. You should expect southbound delays as traffic picks up there, but that is King Edward and Logan. 788-3093 is your commuter line. Coming up, we have business news here on CBC, and today we'll have a standard business report. And if you want to read more about the opening day's markets beyond the stories, you can always go to cbc.ca/business for those, as through the summer our reporting for business changes. So stay tuned for that. We'll get the top line stories on. And then coming up at 6:50 this morning, really interesting interview. We're going to check in on the good, the bad, and the ugly of social media, specifically when disaster strike. So things like floods and fires that we're no stranger to here in our province. That's coming up after your CBC News from Winnipeg.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg at 6:30. Another cool start, just 12 degrees out there, but we warm back up to normal, 26. We also see showers possibly moving back into our forecast later today. Supporters of Winnipeg's first supervised consumption site say the facility should be open for longer than business hours. It is scheduled to open for around 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, but they say drug overdoses can happen anytime. CBC's Ian Fraze reports.
Hey, are you okay? Yeah, let's get up. Let's get up.
Dakota Hunter checking on a person who appears to have overdosed.
We saw you from across the street.
She volunteers, helping people on Main Street, and likes the new supervised consumption site, but wishes it was open longer.
There really is no business hours for drug use. There's a demand for safe places to use, but it's going to occur no matter what at any given time.
The Henry Avenue site will start operating on August 11th, every Tuesday to Saturday, 11 in the morning to 6:45 at night.
The real sweet spot is that afternoon.
Levi Foy is with Sunshine House, one organization helping to run the facility. He says, given the limited staffing, the site will be open when the neighborhood is busiest.
Even when we've tried to experiment with the morning time, it's a little bit slower.
Hunter hopes the facility's limited hours are only the beginning. Ian Fraze, CBC News, Winnipeg.
The planned closure of the United States consulate in Winnipeg will likely have a bigger impact south of the border. That's according to one expert. A State Department spokesperson says the decision was shared with Congress July 31st. The Winnipeg closure is the only consulate in North America. The consulate's main focus here is trade. Brian Peeler is an assistant professor of political science at the University of Manitoba.
Giving up a set of eyes and ears on a province that it's currently making sectoral specific trade decisions about. So this really seems to hurt the United States more than it does us.
Manitoba's opposition Progressive Conservatives say the move underscores the NDP government's failings on cross-border trade. The Manitoba government argues the consulate is under federal jurisdiction and says the decision won't change Manitoba's commitment to keeping a trade office open in Washington. 3 downtown Winnipeg Canadians properties are up for sale. The Radisson Hotel on Portage, the Somerset office building next door, and the Metropolitan Entertainment Centre to the south. That's according to a listing from commercial real estate firm Colliers. The hotel is only available as part of a 3-property package deal. The Met and the Somerset are up for sale on their own. In a statement, Canadians says it is committed to downtown Winnipeg, and the Downtown Winnipeg Biz says there will always be changes to the downtown market. A drunk driver who killed a young couple in Winnipeg last summer was sentenced to 8 years. Kuldip Singh Gill was speeding down Keniston when he struck Igor Popov and Kerry Bonner, who were cycling on a paved shoulder. He admitted to drinking before getting behind the wheel, and yesterday a judge told court his actions were, quote, highly dangerous and morally repugnant. Popov's mother, Elena Manakova, traveled from Montreal to Winnipeg for the hearing.
These mistakes we do during our life, drink and drive, being unresponsible, brings the tragedy to the world.
Manakova says the driver will have Popov and Bonner's lives weighing on his conscience, as well as their child, who is now 19 months old. The Crown is asking for 2.5 years behind bars for a teacher who pleaded guilty to luring a student. CBC's Bryce Hoy reports.
Ketan Badiani made, quote, persistent and romantic advances toward a student, sending dozens of inappropriate messages to her. The suspended Catholic schoolteacher admits that much. Last fall, he pleaded guilty to luring a person under 18 via telecommunications. Months before that, he was suspended from his job at St. Maurice Parochial School, and yesterday, a Crown attorney argued Badiani's messaging caused psychological violence to a student. The prosecutor urged the judge to send a message with a 30-month sentence in custody. Meanwhile, Badiani's lawyer suggested that because his client never sent sexually explicit messages, that he should get to serve a 2-year sentence in the community with conditions. The judge is expected to take the next few weeks to decide. Bryce Hoy, CBC News, Winnipeg.
And a trusted Canadian voice has gone silent.
And that's the kind of day it's been for all of us at CTV News. Good night.
Former CBC News anchor and CTV News anchor Lloyd Robertson has passed away. Originally from Stratford, Ontario, Robertson anchored CBC's national newscast for 6 years before moving to CTV, where he would be chief news anchor for more than 3 decades until 2011. In his memoir, Robertson remembered moving to Winnipeg for more than 4 years in around 1956, a time he called, quote, among my happiest and most productive. Lloyd Robertson was 92 years old. You can find more news updated throughout the day. Just head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
That's a nice Winnipeg note from an icon.
Absolutely a legend, right?
Yeah, of broadcasting for sure. I mean, when someone's been on the air that long, you start to feel like you knew them. You certainly know their voice on command when you hear Lloyd Robertson. So I think a lot of people will be sharing memories today.
Absolutely. And you know what? I don't know if you have time to go to our network TV program this morning or online, but there's some great footage of when he was young and the things he did. He didn't just do news, he did children's shows, he did travel shows. So he says, you know, TV was just beginning and you had to do everything.
I saw that out of we always have the TV on in the studio in case news breaks as one of the streams, but I saw a young, slender Lloyd Robertson, not that he was ever a big man, but, you know, with that, dark hair, which I'm like, is that? Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Right? He was, his hair went gray, and that's how I knew him for most of my life. But
absolutely,
there he was. And okay, that makes sense now because it looked like it was a game show or something. So maybe that was the kids show footage. Yeah. All right. Thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Right now, let's go at 6:36 a.m. on CBC to Abby Adiyemi. Abby's got our regional forecast.
Yeah. Good morning, Marcy. We're looking at another cool start across the province. We will see temperatures rebound back to seasonal norms by the afternoon today. However, most of the regions we do have showers in the forecast, so be prepared for that. You might want to grab an umbrella as you step outside. Here in Winnipeg, 12 degrees at this time, both at the airports and at the Forks. Expect a mix of sun and clouds as temperatures will climb back towards our seasonal high. We get to 25 today. There is a good chance of showers and maybe a risk of thunderstorms will develop late in the afternoon with some winds really blowing from the southwest. And of course, those showers will extend into the evening period before we see some clear conditions overnight. Similar conditions we're seeing across the southern regions, 10s and 12s. That's what we're seeing. The Pembina Valley region, Morden, Winkler, Alton and Morris, 12 degrees there, clear. We're also expecting showers there. Highs 25. Brandon is at 10 degrees, already light rain coming down there. Brandon climbs to 24 later. Across the Parkland region, Dauphin and nearby, we're seeing 11 degrees there. You reach a high of 23. Along with the rain you'd get, you would notice some strong winds coming from the west. Now we go into the Interlake region. Gimli is at 11 degrees, heading to a high of 25 today. Most of the regions down south, we will definitely notice this afternoon showers and thunderstorms. Then we go into the central region, the Power Flim. We're looking at temperatures near 13 degrees, heading to a high of 20. There's a chance of morning showers in the region. Norway House stats sunny at 15 degrees right now. We only see a high of 25 there. Thompson is at 11, warming to 23. Afternoon showers in the mix. Lynn Lake is at 12 degrees, warming to 18. Gillam is at 13, warming to 22. And for the Lynn Lake, for the Tudula Lake region, we're seeing 11 degrees there, reaching a high of 18 degrees with afternoon showers in the forecast. While Churchill just sits at 12 degrees, we're still seeing those morning mists there on and off with foggy conditions being present there. You only get to 12 degrees today for folks in the Churchill region. So overall, it's a cool morning across the province with that transition to the seasonal warmth coming in the afternoon period. Winnipeg right now, 12. It's going to be sunny today. Then we see a mix of sun and clouds and we get to 25.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Abby Adiemi covers weather on the show and is our lead tech. 21 minutes to 7 o'clock, everybody. It's Wednesday morning. Corey Funk is in to talk traffic.
Yes, the only issue out there right now is at King Edward and Logan. There's a hydro outage, which means that intersection, those lights completely out. So King Edward and Logan, treat that as a four-way stop. Be very careful when you're approaching there. Might catch you off guard. If you do see anything else going on out there, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. Curious if that's backed up there or not this morning already. I would love to hear from you. That number, 204-788-3093.
It's time now for the Business Digest with Megan
Good
Reid.
morning. One thing this summer has not been so far for investors is quiet, and yesterday's session was no different. The Dow and the S&P 500 hit record highs, while the Nasdaq rallied over 2.6%. Similar story here at home, with the TSX up triple digits to close at 35,801 points. Barry Schwartz, Chief Investment Officer for Baskin Wealth Management, says that this has nothing to do with the war in Iran, but everything to do with artificial intelligence.
This is a multi-year tailwind for this AI spend. We're not seeing it slow down whatsoever. In fact, the opposite. And that's a tide that's going to lift all ships, whether it's companies that make AI, companies that want to get into the AI space, companies that are implementing AI. It is clear that we've reached a tipping point where these companies are actually earning decent returns from AI, and that's undeniable.
Different tune when it comes to oil, though. West Texas Intermediate, the North American benchmark, lost over 6% to close just over $75 U.S. a barrel. Keeping with commodities, Aramco, the world's top oil exporter, says profit was up 33% in its second quarter, beating expectations thanks to increased oil and gas prices amid the U.S.-Iran war. Net income came in at $33 billion, bringing its earnings for the first half of this year to $67 billion. Along with its earnings, Aramco also sounded the alarm, reporting more than 2.6 billion barrels of oil has been lost since the U.S. war with Iran began in February. Aramco also added that inventories around the world are running low, despite attempts to cushion the blow. In other news, whoops! Hackers drained more than $100 million U.S. last week in less than an hour from Bitcoin wallets sold by Canadian company CoinKite. It sells Cold Card, a hardware wallet that doesn't actually store Bitcoin, but is designed to add an extra layer of security without being connected to the internet. Unfortunately, hackers were able to reverse engineer the wallets and clear them out. Jeremy Clark is a professor of cybersecurity at Concordia.
I don't think that this particular issue is kind of an existential threat to Bitcoin itself,
But it just shows again that, in order to use Bitcoin, you have to trust in software processes and hardware and the protocol itself and the underlying cryptography. And there's a lot of assumptions that you make. And so you have to be really careful. The problem here is there's not much users could do. It's not like there was a certain due diligence that users could have done and they could have caught this.
CoinKite CEO Rodolfo Novak issued a public apology on X, saying his team is working to determine how many people are affected and will publish a detailed explanation of what went wrong after its investigation is complete. And finally, BMW owners are upset with the luxury car maker after it pushed ads for the new Spider-Man movie onto its dashboard screens to 70 different markets around the world. Owners are accusing the company of treating privately owned cars like rented advertising space. To say the full-screen animation triggered an immediate backlash online is a bit of an understatement. Adding fuel to the fire, the German automaker pledged back in 2023 that it would not sell space in its car screens to advertisers. Who wants to remind BMW that with great power comes great responsibility? For CBC Radio, I'm Megan Reed.
So that's our business report for this morning. If you're looking for more business stories or opening markets, remember you can always go to cbc.ca/business for more. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is CBC's Information Radio. We're live in downtown Winnipeg. As I've been mentioning, we woke up this morning to a beautiful, inky, almost navy-colored sky. A little cooler weather in the forecast for today. Feels a lot like yesterday morning. It's partly cloudy and 12 degrees. That causes stress for students and teachers, right? Thinking about fall and parents, families. But don't worry. It might feel a little like fall right now, but we'll return to those warmer temperatures shortly for this Wednesday, August 5th. Our high is going to be 25 with Humidex 27, and we might see a shower today as well. Well, next on the show, it might sound like science fiction, but federal regulators in the United States are giving the thumbs up to a company that wants to use mirrors to sell sunlight here on Earth. So the company is called Reflect Orbital. It's approved to send a single satellite up to space with a huge mirror attached. Now, that mirror would reflect sunlight back down on Earth to the highest bidder. Eventually, the company would like to expand from a single space mirror to something like 50,000. To explain, CBC spoke with Rob Thacker, who's a professor in the Department of Astronomy and Physics over at St. Mary's University.
Really right now, what the key pitch is, there are certain times during the day when there's a lot of electricity demand, like when people come home at the end of the day and turn on their heat pump or their cooling or whatever. So this is really focused on providing any additional sunlight down to solar systems so that they can provide that extra energy. And there's a lot of questions about whether that's truly viable or not, to be honest. It's just the idea that you could actually transfer sunlight from orbit down to the Earth, keeping the solar panels producing electricity even when it's dark. That's the idea. Obviously, it's not dark. You put the light back down there. But really, you can sort of say, why would you want to pay for that if you can have a battery system, get that power during the day, and then use it later on using a battery? Astronomers obviously are really concerned about this, but there's a whole bunch of people who work on insect populations and the impact of artificial light at night on those. But for the launch license itself, that goes through the FCC in the US. Every country around the globe sets their own orbital launch requirements. And in the US, because you actually transmit radio backwards and forwards to satellites, then it falls under the FCC to determine whether something is considered viable or not. And they basically turned around and said, well, the radio is fine because you're just transmitting commands to the satellite. That whole amount of optical sunlight that's going to come down, we don't really regulate that. And so they've turned around and literally, in the view of many people, this is sort of like getting approved through a loophole. In this particular case, you're talking about something that's so bright that for many of the research telescopes that we have around the world, if there was any kind of overspill onto the sort of field of view of the telescope, then we wouldn't be able to do the research. I mean, 50,000 of these things, even when they're not pointing on axis at the place they're trying to illuminate, they are as bright as the star Venus, which is very bright astronomically speaking. And so thousands of these things, in the view of many astronomers, to be honest, this would literally make optical astronomy from the ground impossibly difficult, right? And so this is one of the key reasons why astronomers are really kind of very concerned about where this goes. With thousands of them, the probability of flashes is very, very high. I mean, I don't honestly see how that could not happen, because every time you have to reposition the mirror, you're slewing across the Earth at a high speed, right? And so this is a reality, and I'm honestly concerned about who is actually going to regulate this at some level.
That is Rob Thacker weighing in. He's professor in the Department of Astronomy and Physics at St. Mary's University, speaking to CBC. Now, the company behind the plan, Reflect Orbital, says on its website they, quote, maintain strict exclusion zones for astronomy and sensitive environments, end quote. So many stories right now sound like they're straight out of the movies. That one from a Bond movie, which name I can't recall. How interesting. It is 12 minutes to 7 o'clock. We have a bit of music before our next interview. This is Icelandic singer-songwriter Ásgeir, who's playing at Side Stage here in Winnipeg tomorrow night. This is called Against the Current.
Vulnerable and naked, I've been tossed around by every wind, trying to fit into what you want me to be. Floating with the stream, will in time be the death of me. Wanna break from your boundaries and flow wild and free up against the current. I'm just an idea, a reflection of your beliefs, far removed from reality, a version of me wakes up every morning. I've been in a battle, waging wars on the enemy. I'm the hero and the enemy. The wind disturbs the water, and I split into 1,000 parts. I'm not alone, there's an army within my heart. Floating with the stream, will in time be the death of me. Wanna break from your boundaries and flow wild and free up against the current.
That is Against the Current from Icelandic singer-songwriter Ásgeir, who plays Side Stage here in Winnipeg, as I mentioned, tomorrow night. Pretty lovely music. It's 9 minutes to 7 o'clock now on CBC. I'm Marcy Marcuso. Well, you might have been watching photos out of British Columbia this morning and the wildfires there. Here in Manitoba, the situation is calm and under control after last year's terrible year in the province, but we had our fair share of flooding this year. Whenever events like this happen, photos come out. Wildfires, floods, people who've been hit hard by disasters. Some online posts are heartwarming and with community members pitching in, but other posts are harmful. They're misleading and they're just plain wrong. Social media plays a large role now in modern communications, and local officials are increasingly relying on it. So to talk about the implication of that, Chris Russell's here this morning, Associate Professor at Carleton University School of Journalism and Communication. Good morning.
Morning, Marcy.
So it's interesting because last year in Manitoba, I was talking about the fact that I actually was one of the journalists who took like a course in the importance of verifying photos. We have a whole department that works on that here nationally, because some photos will come out and it'll look like a fire in Manitoba, and you're about to share it. Then all of a sudden, if you dig, you realize it's a photo from a different province. How widespread is the use of social media by officials during an emergency?
It's pretty widespread at this point. I mean, I think everyone realizes it's not perfect. They realize the challenges you were just pointing to, but they also realize they just need to show up where people are in these moments and try to get them consistent, reliable, not maybe calming's not the right word, but with a kind of even-handed tone to help people get good information that they can make decisions on, and also just be a point of connection for them as they try to work their way through these hard events. So I think officials realize they need to be in the places where people are. They understand that things can go sideways in the comments section, as they sometimes can for journalists or anyone really. But that's pretty much where they are on this issue, I would say.
We have so many real life examples of that, about being where people are last year, but then also, the worry that you're missing people in other places, that might not be online, or that a disaster happens so quickly that online doesn't cut it. I'm just thinking of Arm of Lactabani. We had a very fast moving fire there, and the Arm was online. But a lot of people afterwards said, well, I'm not on Facebook, for example. So how fractured is the social media landscape? What's the impact on officials who use it and are trying to figure out where to be online?
Yeah, it's a very fragmented landscape at this point. As you point out, there's a lot of different platforms people are on. It's not just that different people are on different platforms. Sometimes it's sorted demographically. So, for example, younger people tend to be on image-based platforms like TikTok or Instagram or YouTube even. Older Canadians tend to be on Facebook. Political Canadians tend to be on X. And so you get the point that it's very fragmented, and it can be challenging to navigate all the unique aspects of the conversations on those different platforms. You add in the fact that a lot of the content on some of these platforms is now personalized. So you and I might live in the same, we both might live in Winnipeg, might live on the same street, we might use the same platform, but still get really different information about an event. And so that becomes challenging too, where it's not just people are in different places, but they have different reads on a situation that's happening, or even maybe a different sense of reality. So that's we're all facing that, but that becomes especially challenging in a moment of crisis or emergency of the kind you guys went through last year, and that many people are going through this year.
How has the role of traditional media evolved when it comes to disaster information?
Well, I think it remains important for what it's always done, which is becoming a kind of reliable, consistent touch point for information, but also having the capacity to reflect a lot of different perspectives in the community so that people have a sense of what's going on, what the different needs might be, and also becoming a point of connection, empathy, commonality, when, especially for local media, when a community is going through an event. So I think that remains really important, and we've seen that importance become more visible as local media has eroded, unfortunately. It also is serving a fact-checking point of view. You mentioned that you were trained to sort of try to identify some of the false images that were circulating. That's become an important role that traditional media is playing. It's not a complete solution for the problem, but it's definitely something that can give people pause before they act on something, or in an ideal case, substitute correct, authentic information for false fabricated information.
What should the average Manitoban, in our case of our province, understand about using social media platforms or following them for information? Because some people, may still go to that platform and see everything as truth right away. So what are sort of the top cautions if people are trying to verify, in your view?
Yeah, I mean, some people are quite good at using it and understanding the limitations and using it as an organizing tool and building community. And so those people should obviously kind of consider and set a good example for us. A lot of times, many of us may understand that there's false, misleading content online. I think a lot of people understand that at this point. But we can still get caught up in our emotions during a particularly difficult moment, or when rumors start to circulate in high stakes moments. So sometimes just being in tune with your emotions as you think about whether to share or act on a piece of information is important. And there's alternatives now. People not in the middle of a crisis, but in moments that are a little calmer or controlled, can think about whether messaging apps and group chats might serve some of the functions that social media are serving in crises and emergencies, and start to move some of their conversations over there.
All right, Chris, thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, have a good day.
You too. That's Chris Russell with us live, an associate professor at Carleton University's School of Journalism and Communication. It is 4 minutes to 7 o'clock. I'm Marcy Marcusa on your local CBC, live from downtown Winnipeg here on Portage Ave, where we see a clear sky, the sun coming up over the buildings in downtown. Today, it's 12 degrees right now, a high of 25 in Winnipeg with Humidex 27, 60% chance of showers late this afternoon. Bring an umbrella, risk of a thunderstorm with us as well. So 60%, we always say a good good chance, because if it's over 50, you usually are going to see something. Brandon has a similar forecast, though, with a high of 24. And Thompson, 30% chance of showers in your high 23. In traffic, lights throughout King Edward and Logan due to a hydro issue there. In the next hour, we have our medical column. Dr. Christopher Labos is here today. He's going to talk about the latest report about coffee, or I should say the latest data that came out from one source. There's all kinds of different studies on coffee. He'll have his opinion about whether or not, and his researched opinion about whether or not coffee is in fact good for our heart health, and if so, how much. So stay tuned. In addition, a chubby cat named Echo made her way from rural Manitoba to a fat kitty camp of sorts in Ottawa, all with the help of strangers to help her health. Coming up, we'll talk to the organizer of Echo's travels. And then later, a canceled flight, a U-Haul home. We'll get Manitoba Man's story about what happened after WestJet had that strike for one day over the weekend. Heather Wells is in with other headlines now. Good morning.
Good morning. 3 downtown Winnipeg Canadians properties are up for sale. The Radisson Hotel on Portage, the Somerset office building next door, and the Metropolitan Entertainment Centre to the south. In a statement, Canadian says it is committed to downtown Winnipeg. The Downtown Winnipeg Biz says there will always be changes to the downtown market. The Trump administration's planned closure of the U.S. consulate in Winnipeg may affect Americans more than Manitobans. That is according to one expert. Brian Peeler at the University of Manitoba says the consulate serves as the eyes and ears for the U.S. when it comes to trade. And a Manitoba government spokesperson says the U.S. consulate is under federal jurisdiction. So we'll hear more about that story in our next local news coming up at 7:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
Still ahead on CBC World Report, the latest in national and international news at 7 o'clock. It's 1 minute to. Stay with us.
Today on The Current.
I'm Lauren McGinnis. They're called dopamine sites, a new way to shop, sort of.
Except nothing ever arrives because you don't actually pay anything.
You can browse, pick what you want, get the rush of buying it, but it's all fake, so you don't get the buyer's remorse. How to scratch that shopping itch, coming up on The Current.
The Current, this morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
Is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. A wave of strikes has exposed a gap in Ukraine's air defenses. Russian missiles rained down on Kyiv virtually unchallenged overnight. As Julia Chapman tells us, the Ukrainians say they are critically low on the weapons needed to counter them.
The attack began shortly after midnight in Kyiv. Explosions ringing out across the city with little warning. At a warehouse outside the capital, firefighters work to put out a blaze. President Volodymyr Zelensky says Russian strikes hit a construction company, a brewery, and other civilian sites. Rescuers fear there could be people trapped under the rubble. Officials also say an attack on a railway station west of the capital killed several people. Zelensky says those lives could have been saved if the country had more interceptors. Moscow appears to be exploiting Kyiv's vulnerability with more long-range strikes. Ukrainian forces did not shoot down any of the 28 Russian missiles launched overnight. They are running low on ammunition for the Patriot air defense system. Ukraine is negotiating with the US about producing the weapons itself, but President Donald Trump appears reluctant to let that happen. Kyiv resident Tetiana says last night she could feel the lack of air defenses. She says it's becoming impossible to live in the city. Today, Russia also claims to have hit several ships transporting military equipment in the Black Sea. Julia Chapman, CBC News, London.
Votes are still being counted in Michigan. 5 states held primary elections yesterday. The U.S. Democratic Party is being tested as it tries to regain control of the Senate. The party's top candidates are in a tight race in Michigan. Moderate Representative Haley Stevens is up against progressive Abdul El Sayed. Right now, the vote is still too close to call. Many say this primary is a test of the party's future. They say stay the course or build a new one. The seat could be and would be a critical win for Democrats, who are also being limited by redistricting rules in the state. Primaries were also held in Kansas, Missouri, Virginia, and Washington. The U.S. State Department says it is shutting down 5 foreign missions. One is the U.S. consulate in Winnipeg. Businesses on both sides of the border are worried. The downsizing of the United States' economic footprint and trade tariffs are already having an impact on their bottom lines. The CBC's Santiago Arias Orozco has the details.
It's useful to have feet on the ground.
For 20 years, Brad Kirbison worked at the United States consulate in Winnipeg. It opened in 2001, covering the area between Toronto and Calgary.
It's a lot of geography, a lot of people, and a lot of issues that it's very hard to address from that distance.
The office doesn't handle visas or passports. Its key role to promote business and trade with Canada. Now the U.S. Department of State is transferring those responsibilities to its embassy in Ottawa, closing Winnipeg in a bid to streamline operations. Brian Peeler, with the Department of Political Science at the University of Manitoba, says it's a bigger loss for Americans.
Giving up a set of eyes and ears on a province that it's, currently making sectoral specific trade decisions about.
André Brown with Winnipeg's World Trade Center says Manitoba businesses will also bear the brunt. The U.S. consulate has helped them set up across the border. Hydro exports, agricultural supply chains, sales of critical minerals from Manitoba, now left without a direct advocate in the U.S. economy.
Who's now informing the U.S. ambassador in Ottawa on what's going on here?
The State Department says its priorities in Canada remain steadfast. It's unclear when the consulate will stop operating. Santiago Arias Orozco, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Canada-U.S. Trade Minister Dominic LeBlanc is back in Washington, D.C. He's expected to meet with American senators and key U.S. industry leaders. LeBlanc is also meeting with Canada's negotiating team, including Chief Trade Negotiator Janice Charette. The visit comes ahead of the U.S.'s August 19 tariff deadline. If a deal between the countries is not reached by then, 50% tariffs will go into effect on Canadian goods. The targeted goods range from alcohol to hockey sticks to cement. 116 wildfires are burning across British Columbia. Officials are assessing the damage after a day of relative calm. So far, hundreds of properties have been destroyed. And as the CBC's Caroline Bargut reports, officials are warning wildfire season still has weeks to go.
Basically, I grabbed my marriage license, I grabbed a few odds and ends and some mementos, and I was out of there.
When Arlene Jerva saw wildfires moving towards her home on the main Okanagan Indian Reserve, she knew it was time to go. She later saw a video posted on social media of her home burned to the ground, one of about 230 properties destroyed by the Bradley Creek fire.
It's very, very difficult. We're trying to just stay as positive as we can, and we're just trying to not think about it, frankly.
The Pear Lake wildfire burning near the village of Clinton, northwest of Kamloops, has destroyed about 120 properties, and damage assessments are still being done. Colton Davies is with the Thompson-Nicola Regional District.
There were probably dozens of additional structure losses that were just confirmed on Monday. And so we're going through the process now of notifying property owners that haven't been notified. We don't rush anyone through those phone calls, so sometimes they take 20 minutes, sometimes they take an hour.
BC's Forestry Minister Ravi Parmar says this has been a difficult fire season and it's just getting started.
August and September are often the most active period for wildfire in our province. We know the BC Wildfire Service almost certainly has several weeks of high-intensity work left before the wildfire season has settled.
He says British Columbians in fire-prone areas should stay up to date and pack a bag just in case they too will have to leave. Caroline Bargut, CBC News, Vernon, BC.
This has the potential to result in a resurgence of the HIV epidemic.
Dr. Raynell Lang is among a group of Calgary physicians worried about global cuts to HIV programs. They are launching a national consortium. It brings together health experts, researchers, and organizations to find solutions. Lang says less funding from the U.S. and other governments has led to a decline in HIV testing and care.
Because of the lack of access to services and care, people are maybe migrating with little or much less medications that they previously had.
The group is also calling on Canada's federal and provincial governments to do more to educate people, including migrants and newcomers. Health Canada says it is working with provinces and territories on tackling the public health issue. Artificial intelligence is transforming many industries, including farming. A Farm Credit Canada report examines how it can help Canada's agriculture sector grow in areas like irrigation, herd health, and supply routes. Experts have warned about environmental risks. Max Bacco talked to some Newfoundland and Labrador farmers ready to reap the benefits.
I think AI is probably the next big step for farming.
From his farm in western Newfoundland, Wayne Simmons is looking toward the future. From entrenched tech like GPS mapping to new developments like generative AI to help farmers plan, troubleshoot, and figure out how to save money in a world of rising costs.
I think it's got to happen. If we want to stay competitive in the world market, we definitely have to adapt because the world is adapting.
Farmers are paying more for almost everything, including feed, fertilizer, and fuel to run their operations. So for people like Scott Neary, who runs an indoor farm in St. John's, technology is a lifeline.
So if we're not finding ways to not only increase our own competitiveness, but also stay competitive, then I think that's going to be a big problem for food security. So I think that's why it's so important for them to almost need to adopt AI.
Kelly Bronson, an agriculture and AI expert at the University of Ottawa, says artificial intelligence won't solve that fundamental problem in the food system.
We have methods for generating food, more local and community-based food security in ways that don't harm the environment.
While bringing high technology into a traditional practice is still a debate among industry leaders, both Simmons and Neary believe it's not a question of if it will happen, but when. Max Bacco, CBC News, St. John's.
One of Canada's most recognized journalists, Lloyd Robertson, is dead. He was 92. Lloyd Robertson's death was announced by CTV News. He was the evening news anchor for more than 35 years there. But Robertson made his television debut here at CBC News. Lloyd Robertson was awarded the Order of Canada and multiple honorary degrees. He also received a star on Canada's Walk of Fame. There is more on Lloyd Robertson on our main page at cbcnews.ca. That is World Report. I'm Marcia Young.
Well, another slightly cool start to the day here in Winnipeg, but a beautiful clear sky out there. It is 12 degrees. We'll update that in a moment with Abby. You're on Information Radio. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is CBC's morning show for this Wednesday, August 5th. Thank you for joining us or for watching if you're sharing on YouTube with us. This hour on the program, we continue to hear the aftermath of this weekend's WestJet strike. A canceled flight, a U-Haul home. One Manitoba man says Canada's passenger rules and rights aren't good enough. We're going to hear about his family's ordeal. That's coming up this hour. Also on the medical column, you may have seen yet another study about coffee and how it affects our health. We're going to talk to Dr. Christopher Labos. Is coffee okay for our hearts? Is it good, in fact? And for other health issues? So stay tuned. He's going to sort through this at 7:40. And then a Manitoba cat's weight loss journey has taken her on a literal journey to Ottawa. We'll hear from the director of an overweight cat rescue there. So stay tuned. That's in fact coming up momentarily. Right now to other stories and headlines. Here's Heather Wells.
Good morning. Well, Winnipeg's first supervised drug consumption site opens next week, but with limited hours. Every Tuesday to Saturday, 11 in the morning until 6:45 at night. Dakota Hunter is a volunteer. She spends many evenings checking on people living on Main Street and believes the site will save lives, but wishes it would be open longer. We'll hear more about reaction to that coming up. And the Crown says a teacher who admitted to sending persistent and romantic advances to a student should serve an in-custody sentence. Court heard their arguments as well as defense yesterday at the sentencing hearing for Katan Badiani. The suspended Catholic schoolteacher pleaded guilty last fall. A judge is expected to take a few weeks to decide. We'll have more in our next local news coming up at 7:30.
Thanks, Heather.
Thanks.
All right, Abby, what's up in the weather?
Grab the sunshade. It's already sunny outside, though. We'll start cool across board. We're looking at daytime highs climbing into the 20s. Right now in the city, we're looking at a mix of sun and clouds. Later in the day, we should see some showers and maybe thunderstorms. Right now in Winnipeg, 13 degrees at the Forks and at the airport, warming up to 25, and we'll still see early evening showers and thunderstorms before that clears overnight. And that's what we're seeing across the regions at this time. 20s to 25s, that's what the highs will be in the south, while up north, we will see highs heading into 20s in most of the regions. But for today, expect a cool morning, then that gives way to those warm conditions coming your way. Right now, Winnipeg, 13 degrees.
All right, we're about to move into what's happening on the morning commute, but first I want to just talk with Corey for a moment because we have just confirmed that we'll have a story on about an hour from now. Corey, who's our guest going to be?
Yes, Darlene Jackson, the president of the Manitoba Nurses Union, is joining us. There's an open letter that was sent to the health minister, Zuma Zaguar, the premier, and the CEO of Southern Health, talking about what they say is unsafe conditions in the ER, signed by 40 emergency room nurses. So we're going to get more details on what was in that letter and why they're concerned.
Yeah, so what is happening in Steinbach's ER that prompted this on behalf of the 40 nurses, as you said? Darlene Jackson with some response. And of course, we do have the letter. I'm holding it in my hands here. So we'll have that full coverage for you here on CBC in about an hour from now. In between, Corey's a busy guy, like really go behind the scenes. So in between verifying that and directing the show and, how's traffic?
Oh yeah, it's luckily traffic's not too busy today. The one issue is on Logan and King Edward. Those lights completely out right now due to a hydro outage. Maybe particularly southbound delays on King Edward this morning, as you can imagine. So just keep your wits about you. I know the lights were out a few days back, and there was a bunch of collisions there when we had that storm. So just really be careful approaching that intersection. If you do see anything else going on, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number 204-788-3093.
7:14 a.m. and as I mentioned, an overweight Manitoba cat is settling in now at an Ontario fat kitty camp of sorts. Echo weighed 18 pounds. That's twice her healthy weight. And she made the trek from Elkhorn, Manitoba to Ottawa last month. Now, she relied on the kindness of strangers to get there because she wasn't eligible to be on the plane. For more on Echo's journey, I'm joined now by Christine Seguin. She's director of Ottawa's Big House Sanctuary and Rehab, which is a nonprofit rescue for overweight at-risk cats. Good morning.
I'm so excited to be here.
How did you first hear about Echo here in Manitoba? Who reached out?
So an independent rescuer named Alicia, who works really in remote areas of Manitoba, reached out to us about Echo. We had actually worked with her with another Manitoba overweight cat in the past, and she asked if we had space, and then it was a matter of trying to get her here.
What kind of health issues is Echo dealing with? I mentioned twice her, healthy weight right now, but tell me about how that affects her.
So in her case, she has a lot of muscle wasting. She has some urinary issues, which are quite severe. So she was actually at emergency this weekend. She's still kind of on the mend. She's not quite right yet, but we're hoping with medication and a lot of support, we can get her using the bathroom appropriately again and feeling her best.
We're seeing video, or if people are watching, they're seeing video as well on YouTube of Echo here, kind of doing what cats do, rolling around, making her way. She's a big girl. From an outsider's perspective, I mean, a chubby kitty is really adorable. But what are the risks of overweight cats that you want to put top of mind for people so we get maybe used to seeing cats at a healthy weight? Because it's kind of dangerous, right? Well, not kind of, it's dangerous.
It really is. And over 60% of domestic pets, cats and dogs, are overweight. And a lot of people think, oh, it's just diabetes. You're looking at, arthritis. Urinary issues are huge. And it sounds like something simple, but that's a lot of, they get stones, they get blockages, which are really life-threatening. to their liver, to their kidneys, which for overweight cats is way riskier than it is for regular sized cats. And a lot of people don't realize the diagnostics involved. It took 4 different doctors to get a urinary sample from Echo alone because the needles can't reach her bladder because she's got too much abdominal fat. So it makes diagnosing really difficult and treating really difficult.
How unique is your, I'm just curious, I mean, how unique is your big house sanctuary and rehab that takes care of these animals?
It is probably the only one I'm aware of in the world right now. I'm hoping more people step up just with the amount of overweight pets. A lot of times they're euthanized in shelters, rescues, because they're extremely expensive. It takes a lot of time to rehabilitate them. So we're the only ones we know of right now, but we're happy for anybody else to want to jump on board and give us a hand.
And we, I just always need to pause on this moment, right? As a pet owner, and we did that to them effectively. Like we're responsible for them. So it really is something we need to get ahead of here and look at our pets and animals in a different way.
Yeah, we tell a lot of people it's really a human problem. People ask, what is our secret? Honestly, our big secret is we feed them the appropriate amount for their weight and for weight loss. It's calories in for us, calories out. And it's really a human problem who can't stick to it, which is unfortunate because we have all the power to make those changes for our pets. We just have to have, I know it's hard for humans to diet, but it's easier for the cats if we stick to it.
Absolutely. And no judgment by me, by the way, in making that statement. It's, if you're sitting at home with your fat cat thinking, it's, as you said, it's very, very common, but it's something to think about for sure to try to make it better. Echo had quite a journey. This is part of the story. So how did she actually physically get to you? She couldn't get on the plane?
So it's very difficult to find a plane ride for an overweight cat. You can put them cargo, but it's really dangerous when they're having, breathing issues, they're medically compromised. A lot of planes carry-on sizes don't actually fit overweight cats. So you have to be on one specific plane. So the Air Canada Rouge planes actually do fit them. WestJet can't fit them in their carriers. Porter can't, depending on their weight. So it was a lot of trying to find the right plane that fit those size carriers and then somebody going on that plane. So she took 3 drives, an overnight stay in Winnipeg, and then finally was able to get a plane from Winnipeg to Ottawa, and then another drive to us.
That's amazing. So you've got quite a network of volunteers who care to do this, because that means she was driven, even Elkhorn to Brandon to Winnipeg, and then the plane rides. Like, that's a lot of transport.
It is a lot of transport, and it's stressful. Like, we really don't want to put them through that unless there's no other alternative for them. Obviously, we prefer they get help where they are, but if they can't, we will take the risk because the alternative is that they're not here with us anymore.
What's your favorite success story out of your shelter? Like, is the goal to rehabilitate the cat, help the cat with the weight loss and health so that they can are they returned to owners, or are these mostly cats that have been surrendered already?
So these are surrendered or shelter animals. We can't provide rehab for owners. I wish we could. But essentially, we try to get them stable. So we get all their medical needs met. We get them on a diet. They don't lose all of their weight with us because cat weight loss is pretty slow. So we get them stabilized enough that whoever adopts them can continue that weight when they're in their new home. Our biggest success, obviously, is the one on my logo. Oh, wrong side. Biggie, my cat that I adopted. He was 43 pounds. He's 25 now. So he lost over 17 pounds. Totally different cat from when he first came in. Just incredible the change. And he's the one who inspired us to do this rescue.
So how old's Biggie now?
Biggie's 9.
9. Wow. So you said, is that the logo, is your cat there? So it's on your shirt. So I can't quite see it very well, but he looks...
So,
did you say 45 pounds?
43, but pretty close. Yeah, 43 pounds.
Wow.
There are so many like him. We didn't realize it was a thing until we had him. And then the rescue started reaching out saying, can you take this one? And we're like, I guess so. And then it just spiraled.
Was he named Biggie Smalls, like after that?
Yes. Yes.
Love it. Love it. How long did it take him to lose that weight? As you said, it takes a long time for cats to get down to a healthy weight.
Him was the 17 pounds took 2 years. That's not typical. It was a little bit more quicker for him. But when they're that size, they lose quite a bit in the beginning, kind of like humans where they kind of have that rush of fluids and inflammation and things like that.
How can listeners follow the Manitoba Cat Echo's weight loss journey then?
Yeah, so check us out on Instagram, Facebook, the Big House Sanctuary. We've got all of our cats on their weight loss journeys. We do periodic weigh-ins for everybody to watch them. And we'd love to have you cheer us on.
Will Echo eventually be up for adoption, do you think? You've already mentioned how she's doing now. Obviously just been an emergency, still slow going and trying to get her stable and everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Our goal is every cat is adoptable, that we don't want them to have to stay with us for the rest of their life. So Echo, as soon as she's stable, we're going to be looking for a home for her.
Thank you very much, Christine, for telling us about your unique work that you're doing and for the story of the Manitoba cat and how she got to you.
No problem. Thanks so much for having us.
That's Christine Seguin, the director of Ottawa's Big House Cat Sanctuary and Rehab. It's a nonprofit rescue for overweight cats like Echo, the cat from Manitoba that is there now. It is 7:22 a.m. and a bit of music before sports this morning. Celine Dion remains one of Canada's most celebrated voices on the world stage. Fans, though, can now enter L'Auto-Québec's Diva in Paris contest for a chance to see her return to the stage in Paris in September. So the lucky winner might very well hear this. This is one of her classics. We had a lot to choose from. This is Celine Dion on CBC 89.3 FM, and that's the way it is.
I can read your mind, and I know your story. I see what you're going through. Yeah, it's an uphill climb, and I'm feeling sorry, but I know it will come to you. Yeah, and don't surrender, 'cause you can win in this thing called love. When you want it the most, there's no easy way out. When you're ready to go and your heart's left out, don't give up on your faith. Love comes to those who believe it, and that's the way it is. When you question me for a simple answer, I don't know what to say, no, but it's plain to see, if you stick together, you're gonna find a way. So don't surrender, 'cause you can win in this thing called love. When you want it the most, there's no easy way out. When you're ready to go and your heart's left out, don't give up on your faith. Love comes to those who believe it, and that's the way it is. That's the way it is. When life is empty with no tomorrow and loneliness starts to call, baby, don't worry, forget your sorrow, 'cause love's gonna conquer it all. When you want it the most, there's no easy way out. When you're ready to go and your heart's left out, don't give up on your faith. Love comes to those who believe it.
Paul McGowan, you should see our team this morning. We're all channeling our inner divas. We can't help it. Me and Abby and Corey too joining in, but me and Abby have got that. We're pumping our chests. We're singing with Celine.
Is she playing there, or is it just because today?
We're playing her because there's a contest right now to see her in Paris. So apparently she's back on stage in Paris in September. So
That'd be a heck of a show.
it would be a heck of a show for sure. After all of her health challenges, CBC's documentary on that, of course. So, but yeah, could be happening for some folks. This is Celine Dion, and that's the way it is. Well, let's find out how it's going in sports with Paul. You don't have to sing, we promise.
You don't want that.
Why don't we start with tennis? A lot of Canadians in action in Montreal yesterday. How'd they do?
It was very bad yesterday, Marcy. 4 Canadians had singles matches yesterday on the men's side of the tournament. Not one of them got through. Gabriel Diallo and Denis Shapovalov each had to retire due to injury. And it was not much better on the women's side. In Toronto, Catherine Sebov, the lone Canadian woman in action, and she fell in straight sets to Marta Kostyk, although Sebov at least had time to appreciate playing in front of a hometown crowd.
It was really fun to play on home soil and to play in front of my people. I just really enjoyed the atmosphere. It's what I was born to do, and I definitely really appreciated the opportunity. And I'm really, really glad I had a couple matches on center court, and I'm sure there will be many more to come. I spent so many years here, so many hours. Without this place, I wouldn't have became the player that I did, and very happy to play here.
Catherine Sebov talking to TSN there. There is still hope for Canadian tennis fans. Felix Auger-Aliassime kicks off his tournament today in his hometown of Montreal. And in Toronto, wildcard Kayla Cross is back on court today, and so is 30th seed Leylah Fernandez.
All right, let's go to baseball. The Jays have a handful of new faces around after Monday's trade deadline.
And one of the moves that sort of flew under the radar was the team acquiring Jameson Taillon. He, of course, used to pitch for the division rival Yankees, and he is also a pitcher for Team Canada. Pitched back in March at the World Baseball Classic. He's a dual citizen. He was born in Florida, but as he talked about with reporters yesterday, his family has deep roots in Canada.
My parents met at the University of Toronto. My mom is from downtown Toronto. My dad's from a small town, St. Andrews. My grandma was a refugee of World War II out of Hungary, and Canada welcomed her with open arms, so Canada means a lot to us. I've gotten to represent Canada in the WBC twice, which was a huge honor and a blast. I'm looking forward to the opportunity representing Canada in the city of Toronto. I know they love baseball. I've gotten to play there a bunch, and it's a great atmosphere and vibe.
Taillon is not the pitcher that he once was, but he will be part of the rotation down the stretch, and he'll make his Blue Jays debut today. The Jays wrap up their series with Houston early this afternoon. First pitch is just after 1 p.m.
All right, let's end with soccer news. Major League Soccer has announced its new commissioner.
Yeah, Larry Berg is the new head of MLS. He's been a co-owner of LAFC since 2014, and he takes over the commissioner's job at an interesting time. There was a CBS News article that argued that the league feels removed from the big four professional sports leagues, but also that it doesn't really feel like one of the global soccer leagues. And to that end, Berg was asked yesterday if MLS might move closer to other soccer leagues and introduce tiered divisions, with the best teams being promoted and the worst teams being relegated.
I can understand the appeal for the fan. I don't think it's a great way to build the league. I don't think it's a way to get stadiums built and to have owners invest in rosters and all the other things you need to do. So I don't think it's appropriate for our league. I liken it more to Jeopardy. So the great thing about promotion and relegation for fans is the Jeopardy is quite severe, but I think there are other ways to create Jeopardy. That's really what I'm more focused on than specifically relegation.
So no promotion and relegation, although Berg did say there is a new competition format coming, although he did not specify what that might mean, though he did say that we would see a change to how the playoffs operate.
All right, well, we'll have to wait and see. Thanks very much, Paul.
Thanks, Marcy.
That's Paul McGowan with Sports This Morning, live on CBC. King Edward, we still believe lights are out there at Logan due to a hydro outage. We need an update if you're going through that area, and that's resolved. That is King Edward and Logan. Southbound King Edward, we understand, was the area that was most affected. But 788-3093 with an update. On our medical column, we'll look at the latest study that tells us whether or not coffee is good, bad, or something else for us. How does it actually affect our health? That's up on our medical column after your CBC News from Manitoba.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 7:30, beautiful sunshine, 13 degrees right now. We are warming up. 25 is the high. Really good chance we may see some showers or even a thunderstorm late today. Supporters of Winnipeg's first supervised consumption site say the facility should be open for longer than business hours. It is scheduled to be open around 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. But they say drug overdoses can happen at any time. CBC's Ian Fraze reports.
Hey, are you okay? Yeah, let's get up. Let's get up.
Dakota Hunter, checking on a person who appears to have overdosed.
We saw you from across the street.
She volunteers, helping people on Main Street, and likes the new supervised consumption site. but wishes it was open longer.
There really is no business hours for drug use. There's a demand for, safe places to use, but it's going to occur no matter what at any given time.
The Henry Avenue site will start operating on August 11th, every Tuesday to Saturday, 11 in the morning to 6:45 at night.
The real sweet spot is that afternoon.
Levi Foy is with Sunshine House, one organization helping to run the facility. He says, given the limited staffing, the site will be open when the neighborhood is busiest.
Even when we've tried to experiment with the morning time, it's a little bit slower.
Hunter hopes the facility's limited hours are only the beginning. Ian Fraze, CBC News, Winnipeg.
The Trump administration's planned closure of the U.S. consulate in Winnipeg may affect Americans more than Manitobans. That is according to one expert. Winnipeg's is among 5 smaller embassies and consulates the State Department plans to close to streamline operations. Brian Peeler is an assistant professor in the Department of Political Science at the University of Manitoba. He says the consulate serves as the eyes and ears for the U.S. when it comes to trade.
The Americans will still get this information, most likely, but it's going to be from someone in Washington now. So it's not going to be as accurate. So that's not going to be good for them.
A Manitoba government spokesperson says the U.S. consulate is under federal jurisdiction and operates separately from Manitoba's trade office in Washington, adding the consulate closure won't change the province's presence south of the border. 3 downtown Winnipeg Canada Inn's properties are up for sale. The Radisson Hotel, the Met, and an office building are available as a package deal. Details from CBC's Bartley Kivas.
The Radisson Hotel on Portage Avenue, the Somerset office building next door, and the Metropolitan Entertainment Center to the south are up for sale, according to a listing from commercial real estate firm Colliers. The 29-story hotel is only available as part of a 3-property package deal. The Met and the Somerset are up for sale on their own. The Met is a heritage building built as a theater in 1920. The Somerset dates back to 1906. Canada Inn says in a statement it's committed to downtown Winnipeg. The Downtown Winnipeg Biz says there will always be changes to the downtown market. CEO Kate Fensky noted investments are underway at Portage Place, the former Bay Building, and in office towers at Portage and Main. Bartley Kivas, CBC News, Winnipeg.
The Crown says a teacher who admitted to sending persistent and romantic advances to a student should serve an in-custody sentence. Court heard their arguments as well as the defenses yesterday in the sentencing hearing for Ketan Badiani. The suspended Catholic schoolteacher pleaded guilty last fall to luring a person under 18 via telecommunications. His lawyer argued Badiani never sent sexually explicit messages. The defense asked for a 2-year sentence in the community with conditions. The judge is expected to take a few weeks to decide. To Ukraine. Firefighters trying to put out some blazes. Overnight, Russian airstrikes near Ukraine's capital have killed 14 people and injured 27 others. According to emergency services, the ballistic missile attacks near Kyiv also damaged a number of warehouses and logistic hubs in the region. You can hear the latest national and international news coming up on World Report at 8. Winnipeg's rivers are now open to added traffic. The Winnipeg Waterways water bus started running this past weekend with lower water levels and a bigger boat. The service was relaunched in 2024. Since then, co-owner Will Belford has seen operating season fluctuate along with the river levels.
This is our 3rd season on the waters as Winnipeg Waterways. And what we've noticed normal is changing every single year. What happened in 2024 is completely different from 2025, and now we're seeing something completely new for 2026.
Despite the challenges, Belford says they have been blown away by how popular the service has been in recent years. The water bus runs Wednesday through Monday from 1 in the afternoon until 8:15 in the evening. He was a legend in Canadian journalism.
Good evening. Lloyd Robertson for CBC News.
Former CBC and CTV news anchor Lloyd Robertson has passed away. Originally from Stratford, Ontario, Robertson anchored CBC's national newscast for 6 years before moving to CTV, where he was chief news anchor for more than 3 decades until 2011. In his memoir, Robertson remembers moving to Winnipeg in 1956 and staying more than 4 years, a time he called among my happiest and most productive. Lord Robertson was 92 years old. You can find the latest news updated throughout the day at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right, thanks, Heather Wells. That's live from our news department with your 7:30 news. Time 7:36 and a regional forecast from Abby Adiemi.
Still enjoying cool temperatures, just close to the teens in the southern regions this morning. And then we return back to our seasonal temperatures by the afternoon time. Here in the Red River Valley region, Winnipeg currently 13 degrees, sunny outside. Expect a mix of sun and clouds today with a high of 25. We will notice the winds pick up from the southwest and expect a late afternoon showers and thunderstorms that would even extend into the evening period. Across the southern region, lots of sunshine in the forecast. Morden sits at 14 with sunshine. Gimli's at 11. Dauphin at 12. Brandon at 12. We'll see daytime highs get close to 25 in these regions on the mix of sun and clouds before we notice afternoon showers in a lot of the regions. While further north, we're looking at cloudy conditions, scattered showers. The powerful influence sitting near 13 at this time, heading to 20. House and Thompson, we're looking at 12 and 15 degrees in that area, heading to a high of 23. While for the Gillam to Doodle Lake Churchill region, we'll see highs between 15 and 22 today. So overall, we start cool this morning, then we'll give way to that seasonal warmth as temperatures top out in the upper teens in the northern region, while it gets to the mid-teens for the south. Currently, Winnipeg, we're looking at 13 degrees, and we're getting to 25 today.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Corey Funk.
Yeah, really the only issue this morning so far has been at the corner of King Edward and Logan. There's a hydro outage there, so those lights completely out this morning. So treat that as a four-way stop and just heads up as you're approaching that. Don't let that catch you off guard. That's King Edward and Logan. Southbound, as you can imagine, probably some delays from that this morning. If you see anything else going on, though, if you're walking your bike and you're driving, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number, 204-788-3093.
I'm Eric Westaver. I'm your local reporter for CBC in northern Manitoba, and you're listening to CBC Radio 1.
Well, for many of us, a cup of coffee is a daily ritual. It is for me. Maybe one with breakfast, maybe you have some more mid-morning, and then maybe you're one of those people that hits up another cup of coffee later in the day. Among other things, all that caffeine can feel like a perk, a little assist to get through the day. A few weeks ago, the American Heart Association released a new statement about coffee consumption. So before we celebrate being able to drink more, because that's part of what it said, we want Dr. Christopher Labos to help us understand it. What does it suggest about coffee and heart health? He's a cardiologist and epidemiologist. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
So why has the American Heart Association issued, first of all, a new scientific statement about caffeine?
Yeah, you might be asking yourself why now, given that we've been drinking coffee for the past several thousand years. I think the reasons are a few-fold. Number one, there's been a lot of talk about caffeine consumption recently here in Quebec, the ban for young people with energy drinks. But I think more importantly, in the past couple of years, there's actually been two rather large randomized controlled trials about caffeine consumption and the cardiovascular effects, specifically with regard to arrhythmias. So because studies like that are relatively rare, because it's very hard to do randomized controlled trials with coffee and with food in general, I think because of those big studies, they felt that an update was in order. And it had been several years since they had made any type of official statement about the effects of caffeine on the heart. So I guess they felt that might as well get something new to sort of consolidate all the new information in one place.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit about, why has it been so hard over the years to study the health effects of coffee drinking?
Well, it's very hard to recruit people into these studies. Like imagine you and I wanted to do a study, or imagine I was trying to recruit you into a study to look at the effects of caffeine on cardiovascular health. And I want to see if you're going to develop, heart disease or a stroke 10 to 20 years down the road. And I say, okay, you could become part of the study and I'm going to flip a coin to tell you if you continue drinking coffee or whether you have to abstain from coffee entirely for the next 20 years. I think you might say to me,
it's a tough sell.
Yeah, it's a tough sell. It's a tough sell. And this is the fundamental problem with all nutritional epidemiology. It's hard to do randomized controlled trials because it's hard to get people to stick to a particular assignment because people don't change their habits that easily.
With all of that in mind, then, I want to know a little bit about the detail here. So is coffee bad for our hearts? Will it cause a heart attack?
So the short answer is no. The longer answer is that it's hard to know for sure because we don't have randomized controlled trials. We have what's called observational research, meaning that you let people drink as much coffee as they want, do whatever they want. You don't intervene in their lives. You just look to see if over time the people who drink coffee tend to have more heart attacks than the people who don't, which is fine. But you have to acknowledge that the people who drink a lot of coffee are going to be very different than the people who drink very little coffee for differing reasons, all of which are hard to sort of correct for statistically. So overall, we can say coffee is not dangerous to your heart, especially if you drink it in moderate amounts. So people who are drinking 2, 3, 4, up to 5 cups of coffee per day. If you get above that, potentially that's problematic. Caffeine is a stimulant and it is not great for your heart, as all stimulants are not great for your heart. But it's very hard for you to consume a toxic dose of caffeine simply from drinking coffee. When that has happened, it's usually because of accidental or deliberate overdoses, like people using concentrated caffeine powders that you actually can't buy anymore because they were found to be so dangerous with people overdosing and taking toxic doses.
And what about blood pressure, Dr. Labos? Is there evidence that coffee actually can lower your blood pressure?
There is, but this is where we get into the challenge of observational research, because let's say we did a study where we got a bunch of people and we said to them, tell us how much coffee you drink, and you write that down, and then you measure their blood pressure and you write that down, and you find that the people who drink more coffee tend to have lower blood pressures, and you say, maybe coffee lowers your blood pressure. But you have to think about something. What if the people who have high blood pressure restricted their coffee consumption because they were worried about their heart? So it's not that coffee lowers your blood pressure, it's that the people who don't have high blood pressure tend to drink more coffee because they're not worried about their heart anymore. So that phenomenon, which is called either reverse causation or the healthy user effect, depending on which textbook you read, it can cause an association to make it look like coffee is beneficial when it's not, because it's not that abstaining from coffee raises your blood pressure. It's that the people who have high blood pressure tend to abstain from coffee.
And what about other cardiovascular risk factors, like things like diabetes or cholesterol?
So for cholesterol, we can be pretty clear and say that coffee doesn't affect it one way or the other. Most of your cholesterol is genetically mediated, so that's not a thing. For diabetes, again, there's some research suggesting that maybe the people who drink coffee tend to have lower risk of diabetes, but it runs into the same problems that you have with blood pressure. Maybe people are self-limiting their coffee consumption for other reasons. And particularly with diabetes, you have a problem because a lot of the stuff that people are drinking out there is not actually coffee. It's a milkshake that's flavored like coffee because you have whipped cream and chocolate and all these added flavorings to it that make it a very, very high calorie beverage. When we talk about coffee and the potential medical benefits of coffee, we're usually talking about black coffee, something that has 2 to 3 calories per serving, not the stuff that's loaded with sugar and that is probably increasing your risk of diabetes rather than decreasing it.
Let's get into some of this new data here, because you also mentioned some studies have looked at the effect of coffee on developing arrhythmias or irregular heartbeats. So tell us a little bit more about this.
So 2 big studies that have come out in the past couple of years for people who are taking notes for the quiz later. It's the CRAVE and the DCAF study. So the CRAVE study was interesting because what they did was, instead of telling people either drink or don't drink coffee, they told them you're going to have a 1 day on, 1 day off schedule. So drink coffee one day, don't drink coffee the next day. And when they had them wear these portable heart monitors, what they found was that on the days when people drank coffee, they did not have more arrhythmias than the days when they didn't, suggesting that coffee was relatively benign. They did have more skipped beats. So, you might have felt like a skipped beat or a palpitation or something, but it didn't translate into clinically significant arrhythmias like atrial fibrillation that increase your risk of stroke. The subsequent study, the DCAF study, was a little bit different. This was in people who already had atrial fibrillation. And what they found was that the people who were drinking coffee, who were told to drink coffee, actually had fewer recurrences of this arrhythmia. So some caveats there as well, but taken together, these 2 studies suggest that coffee is not dangerous for your heart. It doesn't increase the risk of arrhythmia. Maybe it decreases it a little bit, but we'll see. But it's also possible that if you're very sensitive to caffeine, it could be causing more skipped beats and making you feel the palpitation. It's just not causing a clinically significant arrhythmia.
Coffee, is that like an understood thing then, that coffee does affect people differently?
Yeah. because your metabolism of caffeine is largely genetically mediated. So some people are going to be more sensitive to caffeine than others. And so if you're somebody who starts getting jittery after 1 to 2 drinks of coffee, just stop there. Like, know what your limit is. So everybody's threshold is going to be different, and there's not much you can do about it. Yeah, you'll build up a bit of a tolerance over time. But the point is, yeah, if you're somebody who's drinking 4 double espressos a day and you're having a lot of skip beats, maybe time to cut back a little bit.
Just last, I mean, some of the headlines out there about the study that we started with here say things like, quote, up to 5 cups of coffee a day may benefit heart health. That's out of Harvard, China School of Public Health Online. I'm just reading a few of these. And I could read a whole bunch of them, but they're often positively leaning.
Yeah.
What's maybe either the concern around that, or what do you hope people take away when they read the headlines and try to understand this?
I think you have to understand that there's a little bit of nuance to the studies. We're making the best conclusions that we can based on limited data, because it's actually very hard to do proper randomized controlled trials, right? So I think we can say very safely that there's probably not much harm. Maybe there's a little bit of benefit, but I'm not convinced enough of the benefit that I would tell people to go out and drink more coffee than they're currently doing just to extract the health benefit. You can drink as much coffee as you want, but once you start getting above 5 coffees a day, you're starting to get into a realm where you're consuming an excessive amount of caffeine. That's probably not good for your heart. So for most people, in most circumstances, the amount of coffee that you're drinking right now is perfectly fine. And I think that is hopefully a reassuring message.
All right. Thank you very much for this morning.
My pleasure. You take care.
That's Dr. Christopher Labos filling in on our medical column. I spoke with him yesterday. He's a cardiologist and epidemiologist.
How do you listen to your favorite Manitoba shows when you're on the move? Get your daily dose of information radio, Radio Noon, and Up to Speed, live and on demand. Just open the CBC News app, tap the local drop-down, and hit play. It's the easiest way to keep our province at your fingertips. Download the CBC News app today.
Nice sunshine in downtown Winnipeg right now, 13, still a cooler start. Our high, though, 25 and a good chance of showers. Same in Brandon, though, with a high of 23. It's 12 minutes to 8 o'clock. Be careful around King Edward and Logan. Lights are out there at last. We heard 788-3093 with updates. Well, stay with CBC after 8 o'clock because we have obtained a letter. This is signed by 40 emergency room nurses in Steinbach. It is issued through the Manitoba Nurses Union, who we'll talk to after 8. This is a letter to the province, and they say these nurses, they're seeing, quote, excessive and unacceptable safety risks on a daily basis. It also says in this letter, quote, when nurses have voiced their fear over being charged with impossible unsafe workloads, they've been met with responses like, you're ordering too many tests at triage. This takes too much time. If you didn't order so much, you wouldn't be behind. And, quote, we just don't have the budget for it, end quote. We'll talk to the union about this after 8. We do have requests in to the province. Right now on the show, let's discuss the aftermath of what's been happening with WestJet this week. The strike by WestJet flight attendants may be over, but the fallout's still being felt, and many travelers were left scrambling after their flights were canceled or rescheduled over the long weekend. Now, others had to find alternate plans to get to their destinations. Winnipegger Reese Fraser says he and his wife were left stranded after attending a wedding in Calgary last week. He says they had to get creative in order to get home. And he's on the line, on Zoom live with us with his story. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you today?
I'm well. Nice to see you, Reese. So let's go back to the moment you found out your flight was canceled. Where were you and what was going through your mind?
Yeah, so I was visiting a friend out in Canmore Saturday night. There was a wedding. Sunday morning at around 6 a.m. I woke up to an email from WestJet stating that my flight was cancelled. There was no plan for rebooking the flight, just that it was cancelled. I had to get home to my 3 children in Winnipeg. So me, along with my wife, thought we'll go to the airport. That's a reasonable thing to do. Talk to the help desk and see what they can do, see what information they can give us. When we got to the airport in Calgary, it was jam-packed of people, as you can imagine. We spoke to a WestJet attendant who stated that driving was likely our best option. There were no flights. There was nothing on another airline. We were essentially either stuck or figure out how to drive. So we decided to go to every rental company within Calgary Airport. They were all sold out. So then we started going outside of the airport in Calgary downtown and surrounding areas. They're also all sold out. So at that point, we really did not know what to do, but we knew that we had to get home. So I thought of renting a U-Haul to get us home, and that's what I ended up doing. It was a 10-foot U-Haul, cost an arm and a leg, as I'm sure you can imagine, and took about 16 hours for us to get home. We ended up stopping in Saskatchewan for the night because of such a long drive.
What was the response from your kids here back at home? You said you had 3 kids to get back to.
Yeah, so they were definitely very upset when they heard that we wouldn't be home on the Sunday afternoon like they thought we would. But we assured them that we were doing everything we could to get home to them, and they were really excited to see us as soon as we could.
That's a long haul. So you had one stop in between, and what did you take turns driving?
Yeah, we did. My wife took over a little bit just so I could get a nap in. But for the most part, I drove the majority.
So you said that through this journey, I mean, there was a point where you're at the airport and you're asking, and they're saying there's no flights. That's what the attendant told you, the WestJet attendant. Did you call WestJet? Like, I'm just trying to get a sense of what WestJet told you otherwise about how you might be able to get home.
Yeah, so we did. We attempted to call WestJet multiple times. Their phone line was so busy that they couldn't even put me on hold. They just said they couldn't answer my call right now and to try again later. And I tried calling them over a dozen times that morning.
So WestJet really, that was the only thing that you were told from WestJet, was from that flight attendant saying
exactly.
No flights. Why are you sharing your story with the public?
Because so after this event, I thought, WestJet will do the right thing. They'll reimburse us for the out-of-pocket costs. I did everything I could to get myself home because they couldn't. It wasn't a luxurious way to get home by any means. But after reading some articles online, looking at the CTA rules, it appears that they determine that a strike is outside of the airline's control. Therefore, the airline will not compensate passengers.
That's true. Yes. Yep.
Yeah. So from my perspective, a strike, particularly this strike, which has been talked about and discussed and been in negotiations for months and months, is well within the airline's capability to prevent. So for them to not reimburse is completely unacceptable. And a little update to my story, I actually got an email this morning stating that my flight that I missed, that because they rebooked me for 2 days later, which naturally I couldn't attend, they're also not reimbursing me for that. So me and my wife are out of pocket thousands of dollars because we took it upon ourselves to get home when WestJet couldn't. And I believe the strike is a good part of our economy and that it should be something that can be done and performed. But I think the airline to make passengers be there full out and to cover all of the expenses just to get them home when they've purchased a ticket in good faith is completely unacceptable.
So we have things that have changed in this country for passengers as a Bill of Rights, for example. But as you rightly point out, it doesn't change the fact that according to the Air Passenger Protection Regulations, quote, no compensation for inconvenience due when a flight disruption is considered, as you said, rightfully, an outside an airline's control, end quote. Do you think that should change? Because in your view, as you outlined, this would have been in their control if they had, negotiated earlier, to prevent this from happening.
Absolutely. And another good example to show why that should change is when Air Canada had their strike. And in good faith, they went outside of that policy and did reimburse passengers for the exact events that me and my wife had to partake in. So if one airline can do it, why would the CTA not change the rules across the board?
Well, they're not changed right now. Is insurance something that you're going to think about differently? Because I know that, along the way we can choose insurance for all kinds of things, right? For hotel, and sometimes we don't do that. So has it changed how you'll look at that for trips?
Absolutely. I travel a lot for work and for family, and insurance is typically something that I take, particularly when I fly internationally. Domestically, there's always that notion that, well, if something happens with the flight, I can travel via ground. And the airline we'll cover those expenses in good faith, whether it's rolled correct under the CTA or not. So in this case, that was our assumption, that if something does go wrong, that we would be covered. And I quite honestly wasn't even aware of the strike until I was already out in Calgary.
So now you have the flight that, as you said, you're rebooked on for today. You're already home, so you believe you're going to be on the hook for that. And then also, of course, you paid for the U-Haul. The total expenses then will be what, near $2,000 or?
Yeah, exactly. We're around $2,000 now.
What do you hope happens next, or will you continue fighting for compensation from WestJet?
Yeah, I will absolutely continue fighting. I already attempted to put a claim in, but I was told that we have to wait 72 hours. So that 72 hours is up as of this morning. So I will continue fighting, and I'll continue with the CTA if I need to. Anything to add, Reese, given that obviously you wanted to share your story with purpose this morning? Yeah, I think just a message to our government and to the airlines. Customers, you provide a service and customers purchase that ticket in good faith under the assumption that that service will be provided. And if it's not provided, the airlines should take it upon themselves to provide compensation. And our government should look at the rules under CTA to ensure that the airline's hand is forced when it comes to compensation for their passengers who are valuable customers. Thank you very much for being with us on the Public Broadcaster. We appreciate your time on CBC. Thank you so much. Have a great day. You too. That is Reese Fraser, who rented a U-Haul, as you heard, to get here home to Winnipeg from Calgary after his flight was canceled because of the flight attendant strike over the long weekend. So WestJet has now posted information about seeking compensation for disruptions on their website. If you want to read that, you can find it by searching for WestJet Guest Updates. Well, speaking of updates, after 8 o'clock on the show, 40 emergency room nurses in Steinbach have signed an open letter to the province. CBC has obtained the letter. They're sharing their their concerns, decrying unsafe conditions for patients at Bethesda Regional Health Centre in Steinbach. We're going to hear more about what is in that letter, their concerns, and we'll talk to the union. That's all after 8. With headlines, here's Heather Wells.
The Trump administration's planned closure of the U.S. consulate in Winnipeg may affect Americans more than Manitobans. That's according to one expert. Brian Peeler at the University of Manitoba says the consulate serves as the eyes and ears for the U.S. when it comes to trade. A Manitoba government spokesperson says the U.S. consulate is under federal jurisdiction. And the Crown says a teacher who admitted to sending persistent and romantic advances to a student should serve an in-custody sentence. Court heard their arguments as well as the defense's arguments yesterday in the sentencing hearing for Ketan Badiani. The suspended Catholic school teacher pleaded guilty last fall. We'll hear more on that case in our next local news coming up at 8:30.
All right, thank you, Heather.
Thanks.
Mainly sunny, 13 today. Our high today is 25. Chance of showers in the forecast. Lights flashing red. King Edward and Logan actually out due to a power outage, so be careful there. Still ahead after 8, we also will hear about the federal government's new alert system for tornadoes and severe thunderstorms.
On cue.
The violinist Vijay Gupta seemed destined for greatness from an early age. He performed at Carnegie Hall at 8 years old, studied at Juilliard and Yale. But behind that success, he was struggling with anxiety, addiction, and burnout. He's here to tell us his story.
Q, this morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on CBC Listen, or wherever you get your podcasts. The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current.
I'm Lauren McGinnis. They're called dopamine sites, a new way to shop, sort of. You can browse, pick what you want, get the rush of buying it, but it's all fake. So you don't get the buyer's remorse. How to scratch that shopping itch, coming up on The Current.
World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. In Kyiv, firefighters hosed down flames at a hardware store. It was damaged in the latest wave of Russian missile and drone strikes. Ukrainian officials say at least 17 people were killed and 44 injured in attacks around the capital area. It comes after Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky shared a disturbing video captured in the eastern region of Kherson. A 52-year-old man named Yuri is seen being attacked by an exploding drone. Yuri survived and says this is the second time he's come under attack. Ukraine is accusing Russia of hunting innocent people with drones like a human safari. Critical votes are still being counted in Michigan. It is one of 5 states that held primary elections last night. These votes are seen as a litmus test for the Democratic Party's future. Will they stick with a moderate representative or go with a progressive candidate? Reporter Steve Futterman joins me now from Los Angeles. And Steve, what is the latest?
Well, this is one of the most closely watched races in the nation. Democrats deciding who their candidate will be in this November's U.S. Senate race, a race that could determine which party controls the U.S. Senate. So a lot's at stake. The final votes are still being counted, but right now, the so-called progressive candidate, Abdul El-Sayed, has a narrow lead over the more establishment moderate candidate, Haley Stevens. She's a current member of the House. Now, no winner's been declared, but the New York Times says its analysis shows El-Sayed is the likely winner. Now, both candidates spoke last night, and both were very careful not to declare a victory.
We've had a long, hard-fought primary, and we'll know soon who our nominee is going to be. And whoever wins is going to go and take on Mike Rogers.
We are not a purple state. We are a state in need of a movement to take our politics back.
And of course, this race seems to crystallize the ongoing battle within the Democratic Party between the establishment candidates and progressives. One of the big issues dividing the two sides, support for Israel, with progressive candidates promoting a more critical approach toward longtime U.S. policies in the Middle East.
Break down the other primaries.
Well, one other race I found very interesting was in Kansas, a traditional red state. Voters there, though, rejected a Republican-backed plan to allow voters to elect state Supreme Court judges. And this is another example of how voters in many states across the nation are going against the traditional parties, even when the parties have a majority in those states.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Steve Futterman in Los Angeles. Canada-U.S. Trade Minister Dominic LeBlanc is back in Washington, D.C. He is expected to meet with U.S. senators and key industry leaders. LeBlanc is also meeting with Canada's negotiating team, including Chief Trade Negotiator Janice Charette. The visit comes ahead of the U.S.'s August 19 tariff deadline. If a deal between the countries is not reached by then, 50% tariffs will go into effect on Canadian goods. The targeted goods range from alcohol to hockey sticks to cement. The U.S. State Department says it is shutting down 5 foreign missions. One is the U.S. consulate in Winnipeg. Businesses on both sides of the border are worried. The downsizing of the United States' economic footprint and trade tariffs are already having an impact on their bottom lines. The CBC's Santiago Arias Orozco has the details.
It's useful to have feet on the ground.
For 20 years, Brad Kirbison worked at the United States Consulate in Winnipeg. It opened in 2001, covering the area between Toronto and Calgary.
It's a lot of geography, a lot of people, and a lot of issues that it's very hard to address from that distance.
The office doesn't handle visas or passports. Its key role to promote business and trade with Canada. Now the U.S. Department of State is transferring those responsibilities to its embassy in Ottawa, closing Winnipeg in a bid to streamline operations. Brian Peeler, with the Department of Political Science at the University of Manitoba, says it's a bigger loss for Americans.
Giving up a set of eyes and ears on a province that it's, currently making sectoral specific trade decisions about.
André Brown with Winnipeg's World Trade Center says Manitoba businesses will also bear the brunt. The U.S. consulate has helped them set up across the border. Hydro exports, agricultural supply chains, sales of critical minerals from Manitoba, now left without a direct advocate in the U.S. economy.
Who's now informing the U.S. ambassador in Ottawa on what's going on here?
The State Department says its priorities in Canada remain steadfast. It's unclear when the consulate will stop operating. Santiago Arias Orozco, CBC News, Winnipeg.
The number of new HIV infections is rising across this country, and it has Canadian health officials concerned about global funding cuts for HIV programs. In response, doctors in Calgary are launching a national consortium. And as the CBC's Karina Zapata reports, the goal is to create preventative solutions before it's too late.
This has the potential to result in a resurgence of the HIV epidemic.
Infectious disease physician Dr. Raynell Lang sounding the alarm about funding cuts by the U.S. and other international donors, which she says has led to less HIV testing, prevention, and care in many low and middle income countries.
Because of the lack of access to services and care, people are maybe migrating with little or much less medications that they previously had.
It's why she's working to bring doctors, researchers, organizations, and HIV-positive Canadians together. The consortium is calling on federal and provincial governments to do a better job of educating migrants and newcomers on HIV resources available here. Dr. John Gill, medical director of the Southern Alberta HIV Clinic, is helping lead the group.
We cannot be complacent that this will not directly or indirectly affect us, because healthcare, particularly infectious diseases, is a global problem.
At the Council of Agencies Serving South Asians, research lead Shabazz Mamdani is also very concerned about the international funding cuts. But he says,
we must be very careful not to translate that concern into the idea that immigrants bring HIV into Alberta.
Mamdani says it's also critical to improve culturally appropriate care for those already in Canada. In a statement to CBC, Health Canada says it continues to work with partners, including the provinces and territories, on tackling the public health issue. Karina Zapata, CBC News, Calgary.
Basically, I grabbed my marriage license, I grabbed a few odds and ends and some mementos, and I was out of there.
Arlene Jerva's home was on the main Okanagan Indian Reserve in British Columbia. It's now one of hundreds of properties destroyed by the Bradley Creek fire. 15,000 people in the province have been ordered to evacuate or be ready to leave.
It's very, very difficult. We're trying to just stay as positive as we can, and we're just trying to not think about it, frankly.
116 wildfires are currently burning across BC. The Gordie Howe International Bridge is now open to pedestrians. People have been lining up on the Windsor, Ontario side all morning. They will be among the first to make this crossing into the U.S. by foot or bike. The CBC's Pritish Dayal tells us all about the excitement behind the moment.
And I just kind of took all my yoga mat to sleep on, got my chair here.
Windsor resident Justin Belmore has been camping at the base of the Gordie Howe International Bridge since early yesterday morning.
So I've just been telling everyone for years that I wanted to be the first one to cycle across the Gordie Howe once this multi-use trail opened. So got to be a man of my word. And it kind of started as a joke, but here we are.
Belmore is just one of many people excited to make their way across the $6.4 billion structure. Vehicles have been crossing the bridge since last week after delays caused by ongoing trade tensions with the U.S. Still, some business owners like Phil Jacobs, who runs Jake's Old Town Tavern in Sandwich Town, are hoping the bridge will be a boon for the bottom line.
We've already had probably 8 Americans that have been over already and used our patios.
The path along the Gordie Howe Bridge is more than 2 kilometers long and connects to trails on either side of the border. Officials say it's open to everyone to travel by foot, bike, or mobility device as long as they carry the proper identification. Pratish Dayal, CBC News, Windsor.
One of Canada's most recognized journalists, Lloyd Robertson, is dead. He was 92. Lloyd Robertson's death was announced by CTV News, where he was the evening news anchor for more than 35 years. But Robertson made his television debut here at CBC News. He was awarded the Order of Canada and multiple honorary degrees. More on his life at cbcnews.ca. That is World Report. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcusa. You're listening to CBC 89.3 FM. Thanks for joining us here on the show. Wednesday morning, August 5th. Chilly to start. Could be a little wet later. This half hour on the program, CBC Manitoba has read a letter this morning. It obtained a letter this morning that is signed by 40 emergency room nurses in Steinbach. They've sent this to the province and Shared Health. They are decrying unsafe conditions for patients at Bethesda Regional Health Centre. We are going to share more of what they have told the province in this letter, and we will walk through their concerns with the president of the Manitoba Nurses Union as well. In addition, this half hour on the show, it has been a summer of severe weather and multiple tornadoes in our province. Along with that, though, concerns about how tornado warnings have been sent out to the public. The federal government is right now planning to launch a new alert system for tornadoes and severe thunderstorms. We'll walk you through that and learn more about how it's going to work this half hour. Right now to headlines with Heather Wells.
Well, Winnipeg's first supervised drug consumption site opens next week with limited hours, Tuesday to Saturday, 11 in the morning till 6:45 at night. Dakota Hunter is a volunteer who spends many evenings checking on people living on Main Street. She thinks the site will save lives, but wishes it would be open longer. The head of Sunshine House, which is helping run the facility, says they were strategic around operating hours because of limited staffing. 3 downtown Winnipeg Canad Inns properties are up for sale. The Radisson Hotel on Portage, the Somerset office building next door, and the Metropolitan Entertainment Centre to the south. The downtown Winnipeg Biz says there will always be changes to the downtown market. We'll hear more details on that and other stories coming up at 8:30.
Abby.
Yeah, we're bouncing back to warm conditions across board. Winnipeg right now 15. We're warming to 25. Most of the regions in the south we're already seeing 15 degrees. And we'll see highs of 25. Up north, we'll see highs close to 25 degrees.
Corey.
The biggest issue all morning has been the lights at King Edward and Logan, completely out due to a power outage. Treat that as a four-way stop. Don't let them catch you off guard there, so just be careful as you're approaching that intersection. Other than that, though, quiet commute overall. If you've seen anything, though, out there, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number, 204-788-3093.
Well, as I mentioned, let's get into the story about this letter from emergency room nurses in Steinbach. 40 of them signed their names to a letter saying they're seeing, quote, excessive and unacceptable safety risks on a daily basis, end quote. It's an open letter, and it is addressed to Premier Wab Kinew, Health Minister Uzoma Asagwara, and Southern Health CEO Dana Heumann. Darlene Jackson's president of the Manitoba Nurses Union and here to talk about what is in the letter. Good morning.
Good morning.
So give us a sense of what emergency room nurses at Bethesda are experiencing and the numbers of people in the ER, where they're coming from.
Well, what they're experiencing has been experienced by most nurses in emergency rooms across this province. It's a little bit unique when you're talking about just outside Winnipeg, because what we're finding is that patients that are trying to avoid the wait times in Winnipeg are now starting to move out of the city and go to areas that are closer to the city. So we're hearing it from Stonewall, we're hearing it from Selkirk, that they're seeing more and more patients. But I think the real issue in Bethesda and in many of our rural facilities is that there is only one triage nurse on at a time. And those nurses are finding they are unable to keep up with the triage and the reassessment that's necessary to manage those patients.
So they have their own load from the regional area, just to stay on that point for a moment, and then they have people coming from Winnipeg who are, why would they go there? Would they be going to the rural hospitals? What would be the reason they would travel?
Well, we know wait times in Winnipeg are 12, 15 hours at some points, longer. And what we're seeing is patients that are thinking, if I go out to Steinbach or if I go out to Selkirk, surely the wait time will be shorter. So what we're seeing is more and more patients. But another thing that we're seeing is patients that are coming to our ERs right now are much sicker than they were in the past. So we're seeing patients that are very high needs, and the demand is greater for healthcare, and we're just not able to meet it.
I want to share some of this with the listeners from what is in the letter that the nurses sent and signed, because one of the big concerns is the risk to the public, and they go back to 2008. Manitobans may recall Brian Sinclair and what happened in his case. So he died in HSC after waiting 34 hours, and there were a number of, after the inquest report, there were a number of recommendations, 63 of them made to improve risks in ERs in this province. So this letter includes a number of those recommendations and sort of really holds the province to account and says these things haven't happened. But the other thing I want to ask you about specifically, Darlene, is they also talk about when they look for help, what happens. So, quote, when nurses have voiced their fear over being charged with impossibly safe workloads, they've been met with the following responses. Quote, you just need to make sure you triage the most critical ones first and go back for the others. Quote, you're ordering too many tests at triage. This takes too much time. If you didn't order so much, you wouldn't be behind. And one more response that's quoted here, we just don't have the budget for it, end quote. You can feel the stress when you read those quotes, of what it's like for nurses, but also maybe what it's like for those trying to manage these departments. What's the lesson in this, and what do you hope the response is going to be?
Well, the lesson in this is that nurses are bearing the brunt of the fact that there is not the budget there to allow them to meet standards. That's the bottom line, is that the employers do not have the budget needed to provide the staff they know they should be providing. And as a result, it's nurses that are bearing the brunt of it. They are the ones that are first in line when it comes to someone who's upset about the wait, etc. And they're the ones that are experiencing the violence. And we're seeing more violence because of the wait times.
What do nurses want to see change out of this letter that can be maybe an immediate change to take the weight off?
Well, what they really want is a second triage nurse, because right now they are not meeting their standards of care for those patients. The standards say that those patients must be reassessed, and depending on where they're triaged on the scale, it tells you exactly how often they need to be reassessed. And, one of the comments was, we haven't reassessed our waiting room in a year. That is frightening for nurses, because if you're not meeting your standards, you're putting your patients and your own registration at risk.
As you know, and as listeners know, this is the latest in a string of complaints and people coming forward from the healthcare system and nurses specifically about dangerous workloads in their view. How concerned are you that the public may be becoming apathetic to what's happening, to their concerns?
Well, I think it's very concerning, because unless you've actually accessed the healthcare system in the last year, you don't understand what it's like to sit in a busy emergency department waiting room and for 14 hours. And, I clearly think about a friend of mine who took her an elderly relative around 95 years old to an emergency department, and they sat for 14 hours, 95 years old, 14 hours in an emergency department.
Beyond funding, because if you look at the chunk of the budget that's spent on healthcare in this province, obviously the largest, and so then if you look at all the other things pressing on the province to be able to meet their budgets, if this isn't just about funding, what else should it be about? Like, are we at a stage in Manitoba where maybe we need to take a step back again and change our systems in maybe bigger and more meaningful ways to improve this?
I truly believe that, because when we look at wait times, I believe that the wait times, those lengthy wait times, do not start in the emergency department. That's where they end. We have patients in beds, acute beds, that are waiting for placement to long-term care, that are waiting for home care services, community services, and they're waiting weeks for those services. We have people that are unhoused, that have nowhere to go, that are waiting in acute care bed. We need to deal with that situation, open those beds up, and allow patients that are sitting in emergency departments that are admitted to actually get into those beds.
Thank you very much, Darlene, for outlining some of the concerns here. Appreciate it this morning.
Thank you very much.
Darlene Jackson, president of the Manitoba Nurses Union. We have a letter signed by over 40 nurses talking about the risks and also citing some of the different issues with the risks of deaths in ERs. And Corey actually went through critical incident reports this morning, 16 deaths and 43 major injuries between April 1st and September 30th is the province's latest injury reports. Now, CBC, after we obtained this letter officially, we did reach out early this morning to Manitoba's health minister and to Southern Health for comment. We've yet to receive a response, but just put those requests out early today. So throughout the day, we'll stay on top of what is happening. And if you are in Steinbach, we would love to hear from you. 40 nurses signed this letter by name. If you're one of them and you want to talk about what you are experiencing, or if you're in another rural facility, we'd love to hear that as well. 788-3205.
Manitoba is a conversation that never stops. From your first coffee with information radio to the midday pulse of Radio Noon and the drive home with Up to Speed. Don't let your day get in the way of your favorite shows. Just open the CBC News app, tap the local drop-down, and hit play. Bring your community with you. Download the CBC News app and stay live with us.
Well, you might want to be live during the noon call-in today. At 12:15, the provincial-wide call-in is asking, what has your experience been with emergency alerts in Manitoba? And that leads us into our next interview, because Manitobans, of course, might recall in June the big storm that brought the high winds, hail, and then after that, dozens of tornado alerts on our cell phones. After that, other weather incidents with heavy rain, flooding, and fire. In the June event, though, at that time, some people said they received upwards of 20 alerts in one night. It led people, though, to ignoring their phones. This is how Tyler Samagalski, a resident from Selkirk, described it.
Everybody's phone kept going off every 10, 15 minutes with more warnings, and everybody in the bar was just swiping them away at this point. I think at the beginning of the night, most people looked and went outside and looked, but after that, they just started ignoring them too.
Environment and Climate Change Canada is making plans to update the alert system. They're going to send warnings only to the targeted areas where people might be affected. The federal department says it's hoping to launch the new alert system on August 11th, so next week. Joining us to talk more about it and how it's going to work is John Hanasak. He's professor in the Department of Environment and Geography at the University of Manitoba. He's a researcher with the Northern Tornadoes Project. Good morning.
Good morning.
So this new system is involving targeted areas. Can you explain exactly how they're going to do that? How's it going to work?
Well, the weather forecasters are going to be able to essentially draw what's called a polygon. So they can draw sort of a polygon on the radar display, and what that'll do is essentially be able to send out a more localized warning that would be sort of immediately affected by that particular storm. So right now, the weather regions are fairly large, particularly in some of the rural areas, like Interlake and northern Manitoba. So right now, when they issue a warning, it goes out to the whole larger area that won't necessarily be affected by just that one storm. So this should reduce the number of people that get the sort of localized warnings in sort of a shorter period of time.
Mm-hmm. So really targeted. Polygon, of course, is a shape. So we could be saying a circle or a square, right? It's a polygon. When you look at how big that polygon area will be, how many kilometers, for example, will it cover when we say targeted area?
It depends on the nature of the storm. So, for example, more sort of smaller scale storms could be 10 kilometers, maybe 20 kilometers wide. And then usually what they'll do, depending on how fast the storm is traveling, they'll extend the polygon outwards in the sort of the path, the projected path of the storm. So usually within the next 30 minutes to 45 minutes, maybe in an hour, once again, depending on how fast the storm is traveling, they can issue that warning for that sort of upstream people that might be affected.
So they'll follow the route and then they'll issue warnings kind of along the way. Will the warnings become more frequent as the storm gets closer? We were talking about, the multiple alerts on the phone.
Well, I think likely, from what I understand, what happened was the alert system, it triggered multiple times when it probably shouldn't have. The forecasters, they're not responsible for what the alert ready system does. They just issue the tornado warnings, for example. So I think there were some issues with the alert ready system that was retransmitting or resending the messages multiple times, and I think they're trying to address some of those issues.
Okay, so in the future, though, for people within the polygon system, I guess it may be beneficial to really notice something on your phone going off a lot, right?
Yeah, I mean, we've had so many bad news stories this year. I think this is a good news story in my view. I think this will help. And from I know several of the forecasters are actually going to be using the system, and they've done some testing with it and some training, and they have some pretty positive things to say about it. So I think it's something we can look forward to, come next week and beyond.
Now, the opposite of what happened with the multiple alerts was there was in July a tornado touchdown in Winnipeg's White Ridge neighborhood. It was confirmed to be a tornado in the city, which is quite unusual. In that case, no alerts were sent out. Will the new alert technology be able to address gaps like that?
Unfortunately, likely not. It's what happened that particular day. It was a different type of storm, and compared to the earlier June event, and those types of storms are not necessarily very prolific tornado generators. So what happened there was that tornado was sort of a very small feature that the forecasters would see on the weather radar systems. And unfortunately, we're advocating for this fix as well, is to fix the Doppler radar system, or the processing, so the forecasters can actually have better quality images to issue these kinds of warnings. They're having some trouble picking out rotation in some of these smaller scale storms. And it's becoming problematic.
And will an improvement to Doppler radar, in your view, since you're calling for this, help them do that, pick out those smaller storms?
Well, we need to be able to fix the processing that's taking place. The forecasters have access to, looking at the images. So we're advocating for Environment Climate Change Canada recently disbanded the radar research section, and those were the people that would help try and fix some of the issues that we're seeing in the radar products. And without those people, it's going to be difficult to try and improve our radar products for the forecasters. So that's part of the issue is bringing back the radar section to be able to improve our radar imagery.
Mm-hmm. We've actually heard that concern from someone else. You're not the first guest to raise it here on the show. To your knowledge, is the Polygon alert system the best system we have for tornado and severe weather alerts?
Well, certainly better than what we have now. The United States, for example, has been using this for a number of years, and they have had some pretty good success with it. And I think this is a good move through. For Canada to do the same.
Thank you very much for being with us this morning on Zoom, Mr. Hanasak. Appreciate your time.
You're welcome.
That is John Hanasak, professor in the Department of Environment and Geography over at the University of Manitoba and researcher with the Northern Tornadoes Project. The noon call-in today, province-wide, starting at 12:15. What has been your experience with emergency alerts in Manitoba? And how are you feeling about the launch of a proposed new system? What would work in your area of the province? Remember, the noon call-in starts, and you can share your story. Environment and Climate Change Canada, for their part, does say the intended launch date for the targeted warnings for severe storms and tornadoes is August 11th, next week. However, the launch could be delayed for a variety of reasons, including severe active weather, ironically. In an email to CBC, a spokesperson said, quote, "These targeted areas will only be used for severe thunderstorm and tornado warnings. All other weather alerts will continue to be issued to predetermined zone-based areas. So this update will allow people in Canada to receive more precise severe thunderstorm and tornado warnings faster. This will give everyone the information they need to act quickly and stay safe. ECCC encourages people in Canada, urges people to download our WeatherCan app or visit canada.ca/weather for timely and reliable weather alerts." And that's the end of the quote regarding the new system. We're coming up to 8:30 here. We have more local news to catch you up on your 8:30 news, so stay tuned for that. All morning, this nagging area, King Edward and Logan on the morning commute, has been an issue with lights out there due to a hydro issue. You can call us still late in the show, but you can give us a call. We'll pass it along after the news if it's necessary. 788-3093 is the commuter line, and your news is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 8:30, 14 degrees, mix of sun and clouds today, and a good chance of late day showers, maybe even a thunderstorm, and a high of 25. Winnipeg's first supervised drug consumption site opens next week with limited hours every Tuesday to Saturday, 11 in the morning till 6:45 at night. Well, Dakota Hunter is a volunteer who spends many evenings checking on people who live on Main Street. She believes the site will save lives, but wishes it would be open longer.
There really is no business hours for drug use. There's a demand for, safe places to use, but it's going to occur no matter what at any given time.
The head of Sunshine House, which is helping run the facility, says they were strategic around operating hours because of limited staffing. Levi Foy says they chose the afternoon because that's when the neighborhood is busiest. 3 downtown Winnipeg Canadians properties are up for sale. The Radisson Hotel, the Met, and an office building are available as a package deal. Details from CBC's Bartley Kivas.
The Radisson Hotel on Portage Avenue, the Somerset office building next door, and the Metropolitan Entertainment Centre to the south are up for sale, according to a listing from commercial real estate firm Colliers. The 29-story hotel is only available as part of a 3-property package deal. The Met and the Somerset are up for sale on their own. The Met is a heritage building, built as a theatre in 1920. The Somerset dates back to 1906. Canadian says in a statement it's committed to downtown Winnipeg. The Downtown Winnipeg Biz says there will always be changes to the downtown market. CEO Kate Fensky noted investments are underway at Portage Place, the former Bay Building, and in office towers at Portage and Main. Bartley Kivas, CBC News, Winnipeg.
The planned closure of the United States consulate in Winnipeg will likely have a bigger impact south of the border. That's according to one expert. A State Department spokesperson says the decision was shared with Congress on July 31st. The Winnipeg closure is the only one in North America. The consulate's main focus here is trade. Brian Peeler is an assistant professor of political science at the University of Manitoba.
Giving up a set of eyes and ears on a province that it's currently making sectoral specific trade decisions about. So this really seems to hurt the United States more than it does us.
Manitoba's opposition Progressive Conservatives say the move underscores the NDP government's failings on cross-border trade. The Manitoba government argues the consulate is under federal jurisdiction and says the decision won't change Manitoba's commitment to keep a trade office open in Washington. The Crown is asking for 2.5 years behind bars for a teacher who pleaded guilty to luring a student. CBC's Bryce Hoy has the story.
Ketan Badiani made, quote, persistent and romantic advances toward a student, sending dozens of inappropriate messages to her. The suspended Catholic schoolteacher admits that much. Last fall, he pleaded guilty to luring a person under 18 via telecommunications. Months before that, he was suspended from his job at St. Maurice Parochial School, and yesterday, a Crown attorney argued Badiani's messaging caused psychological violence to a student. The prosecutor urged the judge to send a message with a 30-month sentence in custody. Meanwhile, Badiani's lawyer suggested that because his client never sent sexually explicit messages, that he should get to serve a 2-year sentence in the community with conditions. The judge is expected to take the next few weeks to decide. Bryce Hoy, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Well, Winnipeg's rivers are now open to added traffic. The Winnipeg Waterways water bus started running this past weekend with lower water levels and a bigger boat. The service was relaunched in 2024, and since then, co-owner Will Belford has seen operating season fluctuate along with the river levels.
This is our 3rd season on the waters as Winnipeg Waterways, and what we've noticed normal is changing every single year. What happened in 2024 is completely different from 2025, and now we're seeing something completely new for 2026.
Despite the challenges, Belford says they have been blown away by how popular the service has been in recent years. The water bus runs Wednesday through Monday from 1 in the afternoon until 8:15 in the evening. You can find the latest news at any time, updated throughout the day. Just head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thanks, Heather.
Thank you.
Heather Wells and Mike Arsenault, Cameron McLean in our news center this morning. Also thanks to Abby Adiyemi, Corey Funk, and Darren Marash in our control room. Leif Larson is the senior producer of audio here at CBC Manitoba. Nellie Gonzalez is the producer of our current affairs programs. And the associate producers with items in the show today, Emily Enns, Kaylin Monkman, and reporter Jim Agapito, who's made his triumphant return to the newsroom. Thanks, everyone, for your work on today's show. Appreciate you. All right, Corey Funk, anything to add here?
The only issue is still King Edward and Logan. Southbound King Edward, those lights are out right at the intersection with Logan completely because of a hydro outage. So just look out for that. Might be some backups there. Treat that as a four-way stop.
Pesky, right to the end of the show. It's been all morning, eh?
Yeah, all morning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And remember, to get you home, Up to Speed will be here, and that traffic line will be opened once again. Let's have our last look at the weather forecast.
It's the return of the 20s, Mercy. We're looking at a seasonal warmth across the region. The southern part of the province will see highs near 25 today. We're hugging 15 degrees at this time, while up north, we're seeing temperatures between 11 and 17. Winnipeg, sunny 15. We get to 25. There's going to be late afternoon showers and evening showers.
All right.
For that.
Thanks, Abby. I need them to water my plants. I get lazy in August. I don't know about you, but it sure has been hot and dry, so they need some water. It is 8:36, which means we're right around the corner from the Current, and that is coming up next year on CBC with your latest in the national shows coming from our network. So stay tuned, and we'll be back again tomorrow with another edition of our show. This has been Information Radio on CBC, live from downtown Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Take care, everybody.